afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session in the afternoon, the last session. Alright, so today I'm going to present a project currently still ongoing. I appreciate if you can provide some feedback about this research. Alright, so I'm going to present about charitable giving with mainly the voluntary preferences. So the title is Volunteer Now Later, the effects of effort time allocation of donation. So I'm Beec, and this is collaborative with my author, Monica Capra, and Yuxing at Conrad University. So how did this study get started? So it's like in church, and then Monica one day like had an interesting conversation between me and Monica, and she said, "Beec, why are you so busy with your church?" I'm like, because I'm to help out at the church is good. And she said, "Why are you so busy? Why not just give time? Why you have to serve?" I was like, giving money and serving a church is a very different thing. And she said, "That's interesting. Let's study this problem." And then that's how we get started. So we want to study if there is difference between monetary donations and voluntary. And then we add a little flexibility in our volunteering choices so that the decision maker face the choice between now and in the future and see if their preferences is going to change to choose now versus later. So that's how we get the study. That's how we start the study. All right. So the background, the motivation. We still need to go back to the foundation of what has been done in this area. So it estimates about 1 in 3 and 1 in 4 individuals in the States or in the UK volunteer their time to different courses. And then estimated time value of volunteering also very significant. And we also have studies shown that volunteering significantly improves individuals' life satisfaction as well as well-being for individuals and groups. And then all those charitable monetary donations have been widely studied in our experimental behavior domain. Little is not about volunteering. So that's how volunteering in the study plays in a very important role in the literature so far. Alright, so our main research questions. So as I said, we're going to mainly study if there's differences between effort, time, donations versus monetary donations. That's the first question. And second is that do people prefer to volunteer sooner or later? If they have the freedom to choose now or later. And that's flexibility, that's time over like the choices volunteering now or later, increase volunteering after donations. Lastly, do individuals exhibit time and consistent preferences towards volunteering? So those are the important questions you want to explore. Okay, so background literature, right? So very important literature on charitable money donations. Probably many of you know all of our very important contributor in this area is Jean. Actually have done a lot of work on monetary donations, and they show that flexibility in monetary donations increase the rate of donation. And then there are also some evidence of dynamic consistency, meaning that if offered to make the choices donating now in the future, people is gonna make kind of consistent donation choices. And then study have found like the commitment, effect of commitment and one blow that all plays a role in dynamic consistency. And then also have shown that transaction costs actually decrease the rate of charitable giving. And then lastly, about volunteering is that people have found that volunteering actually give people more utility than monetary donation. Right, so our study, the contribution in this whole area of literature, we want to actually develop a model. This model actually is very comprehensive. We consider one blow, we consider altruism, transaction costs, and then all this very like psychological impact of people's making decisions in the model. And then we use the subjects from the part to test our prediction from the model, and you will see actually our model is pretty like awesome to show like people's behavior in this study. And we also find time flexibility increases over effort donations, although there's also dynamic consistency. So in the end, flexibility in choices increase donations. And then we also show that effort donation actually costs less dynamic consistency than the monetary donations. And then our paper is the first to study the effect of volunteer flexibility and dynamic consistency in individual effort donations. Alright, so set a problem. Alright, so in the future later slides, I will specifically talk about parameters of the treatment, but now I'm just giving you a big picture. So what we are doing in the experiment? So in the experiment, we have now choice and future choice. Now choice, for example, like today, on day 1, right? And then we present individuals with set of survey questionnaires. And we put survey questions while become a chart. And then on the same day, day 1, we release several kits. So whoever choose or select whatever take that kit will be automatically become subjects of that group. Alright, so we kind of almost equally divide all the survey questions on 2 days. So that each day subjects spend around 12-15 minutes to complete the survey on each day. And then that's a now survey. And then they are also required to complete another survey on the future date. That's going to be 3 days later on day 4. And then on day 4, they are going to see a different set of questionnaires, but they all need to complete both questionnaires on those days. And then depending on the group, as I said, it's kind of randomly selected, right? So whichever key they see, they want to choose, and then they'll be randomly selected into different groups. So we have group 1. So group 1 individuals on their survey questions will give them choice, say, are you going to volunteer today or no? So volunteering means that you give them additional set of volunteer survey. That volunteer survey almost takes individuals 2 or 3 minutes to complete. And then if they choose yes, they want to volunteer, then we're going to donate money to a regional charity. Regional charity is very centralized organization that kind of gather people's money, and then they have the freedom to choose whether charities that's going to help improve poverty in the developing countries. So that is the volunteering survey. And then on each day, I forgot to mention that on each day, if they complete one survey, they are going to get $2. On the second the survey they complete on day 4, they're going to get another $2. But we don't pay them until they complete both survey on day 4. And then we're going to check their work, and if they complete both, then we'll reward them money. Just to simplify, they complete both surveys. And then that's group 1, only face the now choice, like volunteer now or no. And group 2, they are going to face the volunteer transition. Are you going to volunteer now, in the future, or no? Future is 3 days later. And then on future, when future comes, and then that individual in group 2 is going to confirm their choices made on 3 days ago, or they're going to complete break their promise or change their mind. That's remain. And then group 3, so if they are in the group 3, then they are going to face the choice of volunteering in the future or not volunteer. And then on future day comes, then they're going to confirm or break the promise. And then as a comparison group to this group 3, we have group 3N as monetary donation. So so all the 1, 2, 3 is voluntary donation, and then 3N is monetary donation. So we are still ongoing. This treatment is still ongoing. Currently, we have about 58 subjects complete this treatment. So we ask them, do you want to donate money? And if yes, then we don't donate $2 to the charity. If they select no, then they are going to reward them $1. All right. So and then when future comes, then that individual can confirm donation or change their mind. All right. So that's our treatment and the design. Okay, so model, let me provide you some idea about the model. As I said, it's a pretty comprehensive model. We incorporate a lot of factors. For example, the volunteering consists of answering additional questionnaires that are same individuals. And then upon completion effort donation volunteering, the experimenter contribute a fixed amount to this charity. That's one. Effort for additional questionnaires now and future, and it's costly to volunteering. To donate effort, and then we also have consider transaction costs. Right. So the next slide is also a list of factors we consider in the model. There's an endowment now in future that's $2 for now, goes for future, and the one below, right? So the one utility and then altruism. And then we also consider this utility when people say no. People like to say yes, people don't want to say no, because this is helping people, right? And then also don't want to break the promise, and then there's this utility when break promise. And then you just have the same levels preferences. So actually next slide I kind of omit almost like 20 slides because we have like 3 different groups and we kind of develop like models for different groups and then try to find out the threshold values so that some employees will help. So if people set whatever variables here or parameters here less or equal to whatever value, then they will prefer some choices. So those are like threshold critical values. Yes.
How did you frame the questionnaire in the survey? Because to look natural, like to look natural, like want to put a questionnaire for a survey because that the person who is asking is going to make some money.
Yeah. So we will see the design and the questionnaire. Okay. Good question. All right. So I'm going to omit like the model part, but this is just a hypothesis derived from the model. And then the first hypothesis is that flexibility in giving different options of volunteering can increase overall effort donations. And then similar here. And then second hypothesis from the model says that flexibility can decrease the rate of directly refusing to donate now. And meaning that if they offer a choice of volunteer now, future, and then people will usually, if they like to donate or volunteer, then they will do that in the future. They will not say no right now. And then flexibility can increase the dynamic consistency. Okay. And then next one, because one goal, donation rate is higher in volunteering than voluntary giving. And then also for the groups that face the future choices, and then the rate of dynamic inconsistency in volunteering are lower than that in voluntary giving with the one goal effective voluntary. And then the 5 time preferences, we actually incorporate the discounting rate, and the model predicts that direct refusal rate increases in both the groups that face future choices. And altruism, so altruism will increase donation rate in all the groups, and then depending on which future group that altruism plays, then remaining rate in group 3 decreases, in group 2 that increases. So those other hypotheses that derive from the model, we have not seen the data yet, we have not like seen the experiment. This section of those other hypotheses. And then, okay, so here's our experiment. We currently have 600 subjects from entered and about 550 participants engaged in this referral treatment, and then 58, as I said, in the monetary given treatment. And even split of both genders, and about our subjects age average at 40, and then 80% white, and then 65, 87 are at some college grade higher. Right, so subjects are randomly assigned to one of the treatment groups. Group 1, currently those are demographic individuals here, group 1. So group 1 only now or no. And group 2, now or in 3 days or no. And group 3, volunteering in the future in 3 days or no. Versus the group 3, the monetary treatment. Okay, so those are individuals. Okay, so in each group was assigned, was asked to answer questionnaires on both day 1, day 4, and okay, so here are the questionnaires. The revised questionnaire, behavior tendencies, the sun quiz, and then the surveys. Kind of right now is pretty popular right now that many people use from and all measure like content altruism preferences using survey questionnaires. And then big 5, personality traits and locus control. Right. So payment and tax, as I said, on day 1, day 4, they each get $2, and the payment upon completion of second survey, and 12 minutes to complete each survey, and then this other completion rate. So 90% of the subjects are complete both surveys. And then volunteering, okay, that's it. Different groups face different choice of volunteering now, future, or no. Okay, so here the survey decision task page where subjects see and then choose. So we're gonna ask them, would you be willing to answer additional questions to benefit the charity? You will not be paid for answering additional questions. However, if you choose to answer additional questions, it will contribute $2 to this giveaway charity. And then these additional questions they will see, and then but we can describe what is this giveaway. Giveaway is organized, like organizations utilize the donations to charity that to elevate poverty. And then we kind of listed the 3 top rated organizations or charities by this organization. We have against malaria, and I don't know how to pronounce this. If you can help me, that would be great. But that's good. This is good charity. And then the Demoir, the Work Initiative. So, and then we vegan choices. Would you like to answer additional questions for charity? That's the group 1. That is the now or no, right? So that's group 1. And then group 2, everything the same. You ask different questions. Would you like to answer additional questions for charity now or in 3 days or no? And then group 3, the same thing. And would you be willing to answer additional questions in 3 days or not? So those are the questions, please. All right. So when future comes, group 2 and 3 individuals need to make a decision whether they're going to confirm the choice answer 3 days ago or completely break the promise, right? So that's 3 and 2 individuals. Yes. All right, so here are our results. As I said, our model is pretty awesome. That kind of predicts the behavior that subjects will choose prior to gather data. So that's really good. So hypothesis 1, we said flexibility in choices increase donation. And then this is exactly what we have. So we have group 2 individuals like. This is pretty significant compared to only the now choice. So this is on the future. All right, so hypothesis 2 is that flexibility in voting choices actually also cause lead to like the So flexibility in group 2 will lead to direct refusal of volunteering lower, right? So that's 2 and 3. That's the group 1 saying they have to say no right now. And then 3, group 2 and 3, this vertical represents remaining rate. So this is significant at 9% level. Is that individuals who actually have the choice of volunteering, flexibility in volunteering, then they actually cause some like consistency here. Because those are remaining rates, they don't like break the promise. And then, okay, 4, comparing volunteering and monetary giving. So volunteering and monetary giving, that's very important result. And we find that volunteering, so donation rate, volunteering is higher than monetary giving. And also remaining rate, breaking the promise rate, volunteering is less than monetary giving. So we compare like within our treatment, so donation rate volunteering versus giving money in our treatment, this is significant. Sorry, this is the dynamic inconsistency here, right? So this is the dynamic inconsistency in Angelini and Sarah Garcia's paper. Those are the remaining rate, breaking promise rate. And in our treatment, volunteering, we see much lower dynamic inconsistency in volunteering. And then compare the monetary giving and the volunteering. So this is the remaining rate in the monetary giving. In our treatment, this is the remaining rate in the volunteering. So volunteering actually leads to much lower, significantly lower rate of dynamic consistency. All right, so this altruism, we find that the parameter altruism causes a higher donation rate in all the groups. And then for the remaining rate, altruism causes lower remaining rate in the group 3. And then personality traits, we find that altruism is someone's extrovert, right? So extrovert, and then that individual is actually relating more likely to growth tolerance. And then consistent with the literature, the agreeableness and the neuroticism, actually those are positively related to donation rate. That's pretty consistent with the literature. And then our conclusion and contribution. So we say flexibility matter, flexibility increase donation rate, and flexibility also decrease the rate of saying no right now. And then flexibility in volunteering cause dynamic consistency in volunteering, but the dynamic consistency rate is lower when we donate money. And then the last one, altruism, the more likely for for them to volunteer, and also depending on the group they are in, actually will increase the relating rate if they face in the future choice. And then personality traits, as you see, affect both motion rate as well as the relating rate. And we also find that women and older, higher IQ individuals that's confident in their own IQ are more likely to volunteer. All right, so all right, as you may wonder, okay, so this volunteer survey, they are going to volunteer why they spend the time, because those individuals, they actually sign up for enter this for make money, and then you may wonder why they want to spend extra time just to help you, right, volunteer. So here are some answers from their responses. With a small amount of money to help a good course, I don't have anything else going on right now. I gave money so I can be generous with my time to help a charity because it was not coming out of my money and not volunteering and it makes me feel good. So this I cannot explain because idea they choose to volunteer. They are not just go there, sign up there just to get money. They actually have to care about other people. All right, so application of future work. Alright, so we say although travel frontier relations are widely studied, little has been found or studied about volunteering choices. You keep the flexibility. And we are trying to get data for monetary donations, volunteer workers, and we also want to extend horizons. So right now we have futures likely later. Obviously, this is not sure, but compared to the tax that amateur workers have to do, maybe 3 days probably considered future because they are like do things very quickly, they want to complete and get money. That's their like attitude, right? But we want to kind of extend the time horizon to see if this time preferences or this time rate really plays a role here. And we only use higher opportunity cost. So right now, all their treatment are given on the weekdays, so probably that relatively easier for them to follow up. But we want to kind of make this follow-up survey would have higher transaction costs and see if they react to the higher transaction costs. So that's right now we have fine, education, of course we have questions and
Okay, so do they do like a before a task before they are asked for volunteering?
no, we do the
So they go straight to the volunteering task, yeah? Like, and I'm asking because of one of the comments. So
as a task. What is a task? Yeah. Task. So basically we gave them like demographic surveys, asking the age, whatever that age. Yeah, so they will need to do some of the tasks. Right.
okay, because of course because they were paid before being asked to start something that is volunteer. Yeah. I'm wondering what would happen if instead of paying beforehand, if you ask them directly, could you please do this just for charity reasons? And you don't pay them before because
No, we wait till they complete the second survey, and they know that. And they don't get money if they complete the survey today. They don't get any money today.
okay.
So they're going to volunteer today, and they're going to volunteer on day 4. But once they complete both surveys on day 4, they'll check the work and the work. But they know they will get money $2 for completing one survey now, and the other one day. Questions? Okay.
Apologize if I missed this. Could you ever calculate a applied grade rate that for volunteering activity? So does it, you were to hire somebody to do that? That's what you did. Yes. So instead of volunteering, suppose they got paid for doing that job, market rate,
Yeah.
and then you give money to earn for that. Sure.
Oh, yeah.
You know how much was earned to do the volunteer work?
Oh, yeah, so we show on the decision like that page, say, you are not going to get money for volunteering. But if you answer volunteering after this question that we're right now, then you don't get $2 to this charity. That is volunteering effort. Yeah.
The way you do it for volunteering, paid position, higher than what they get.
Oh.
And then that same value with wages, that's the comparison that we do that job.
Oh,
And it makes sense to volunteer first.
I see.
So typically that's not the case.
Right.
Usually you volunteer for jobs that you're overqualified. You can't volunteer for jobs that are underqualified. By definition, almost you can volunteer for jobs. You can be your market.
Market rate. So, we actually have a set of, another like treatment, try to gather their perception of how much time they spend on working. And many of them, actually like 2 or 3 minutes, and then 2 or 3 minutes, that's their value of the time is $1. That's why for the monetary treatment, we say, if you decide to donate money, then we'll donate $2. But if you choose not to donate money, we'll pay you $1. So that's the rate. We have to calculate it based on the, like you said, market rate and time.
Some of you overpaying for volunteer.
We are not overpaying for those. What do you mean by overpaying?
I'm trying to
Yeah.
they volunteer, you can give less money directly to charity.
Yeah, if they want to answer the survey, then we'll donate $2 for each individual supporter. Thank you. I think that's it.
Just one question about the framing of this additional question.
Yeah.
They had the answer. What was it? What type of questions did you ask?
Oh, so these questions are from Folk and Wall at all, like this questionnaire from their surveys, I show you. This one. So,
It's like a fault, not fault.
yeah, Folk and Wall, like that questionnaire is like, I put the questions to my account.
So it's clear to them that by answering these questions at the very end, at the end of the
Yeah.
experiment, we are not generating money.
Yeah, not generating money.
They're just doing this as a favor to you.
Yes.
And then in exchange,
Right.
maybe.
That's, yeah, so before allow them to see this donation choice, we say, hey, you are done with your survey questionnaires. Then we are going to show you additional survey questions. You don't have to do this right, you don't have to answer the question, but if you do, this is what we do.
How do you frame the monetary donation? Where does the money come from?
Oh, yeah, so for the monetary treatment, we say, then it's still same. So after they complete a fixed set of questions on day 1, and if you either group 1, like now or no choices, we say here, we are done with today's responsibility. And you are going to answer additional questions. We are going to ask you, are you going to willing to donate, will you prefer first to donate $2 to this charity or no? If you choose to say yes, then we will donate. If no, we're going to pay you $1 or not to keep this money for yourself.
No. ¿Quieres limpiar contenido? Está bloqueado. Como si estuviera bloqueado. Pero no me deja. Espera que hable. No, no, no está freeze. No está frozen. Ya. Sí. Sí.
So, good afternoon to everyone. Thanks for being here and thanks for the organizers of this conference. It's really quite an honor and pleasure to be here during these days. My name is Juan Felipe Ortiz Malo. What I'm going to present now is a working process that we're conducting as a part of a larger and overarching project on participatory processes for natural resources management, which is conducted in close collaboration with Catherine Kotler and Stephanie in Osnabrück University in Germany. So before going into the concrete objectives and research questions of our study, I would like to give you some facts about the aspects that motivate our research. As I say, this is work in progress, so I really appreciate and welcome every any criticism or question or comment. So, participation, specifically stakeholder involvement, it has been deemed critical for the proper management of the environment and the natural resources. The 10 principles of the 1991 Rio Declaration, for example, on environmental development, highlights that environmental issues are best handled with the participation of all concerned citizens at the relevant level. Our question is, what is the kind of behavioral effect that we could expect from this kind of participatory intervention? So here it's important to highlight that we don't focus on the effect that involving stakeholders may have on environmental or natural resources management outcomes, because this is has been touched on very extensively in other parts of the literature. What we focus on is once these stakeholders are involved in the process, what are the effects that the participatory method use to work with these stakeholders with triggers regarding behavior. So, for example, through the intervention, through this kind of participatory interventions, the stakeholders could start reflecting for the context, their actual situations, understanding the linkages between the individual actions and the collective outcomes, and as well to understand each other's perspectives. And that's the focus of this particular study, the relationship between participation and perspective taking. Because one of the very common elements that is highlighted in the literature study and anecdotal evidence is that for these stakeholders in participatory methods are induced to take on and understand the perspective of other actors, and it is expected that by this way, stakeholders are start somehow behaving in a more collective or social manner. Perspective taking can be used by several manners, by instructions that in this process, the stakeholders are specifically instructed to consider others' perspectives. It could also be used through dialogue and deliberation, that is communication. They get to know what the perspective of other actors are. And also by letting them get a broader understanding of the situation, for example, by tracing the action outcome linkages, they could get also to know what these other perspectives are. And one aspect that is also common in some kind of these interventions is inducing stakeholders to experience or to simulate how it would be to be in others stakeholders' shoes. And these two last aspects are the ones this study focuses on. So the specific objective of our study is to examine whether and how understanding and taking on the perspective of others might affect social behavior. The concrete recent questions we are tackling are, does induced perspective taking to both reversal or to a better understanding of the situation alter social behavior? And the second question regards to the channels of delivery whereby this effect could be realized. So we don't only test for the sheer effect of perspective taking, but we also examine what the possible channels are whereby this effect is realized. What is the relevance and contribution of these studies? The first thing we highlight is that it could help us expand on in our understanding of how these participatory interventions work. Because as I said, especially for the management of natural resources and environment, is increasingly highlighted the importance of involvement in stakeholders, but it's not that much clear what the effect that these type of interventions could trigger. And in the second point, I think that this is a good way to identify what would be the possible behavioral, situational, and contextual factors that determine the condition of safety outcomes that would be triggered by inducing perspective taking, which is a key factor. So let me now go about over the aspects that the literature has highlighted about the importance of perspective taking and the relationship that it could have with social behavior. And here I draw on mainly on the literature from social psychology, social neurosciences, and there are some also important contributions in the experimental literature in economics. So according to the literature, induced perspective taking seems to bolster social cooperation and coordination, also to increase feeling of closeness and similarity between actors involved in the process. Also, we have that some sort of empathic concern is triggered, and thereby helping behavior could be also expected. And the inducement of perspective taking will also host the exploration of mutual gains, collaboration, and joint action, and that's some of the outcomes that have been highlighted in the student participation literature. However, it could also be expected that prosocial behavior eventually could undermine prosocial perspective taking, could undermine prosocial behavior, because by stepping into the shoes of others, stakeholders or actors in general would don't like that much what's seen in the ones in the shoes of others. For example, they would confirm some preconceptions they have about other participants, and that it could be especially problematic in non-cooperative or competitive situations. And it could also happen that the perspective taking or the stepping into the shoes of others could trigger distressing or negative emotions, and by this way people could keep from hurting others. So we have these two potential effects. We would like to explore them. So in summary, the final effects of inducing perspective taking to go reversal, which is the kind of manipulation we focus on, will depend on how beliefs about intentions, actions, and expectations of others are observed. So one is perspective taking is what's happening about the beliefs of what others are expecting or how others will behave. It will also depend on what are the specific emotions triggered by this manipulation, the social norms that might be activated in the process, and the inherent predisposition of participants for taking the perspective of others and for feeling concerns of others. So these are the key aspects that we very much when setting up the study. So if there is no question thus far, I move to the experimental design. So what is the general situation we try to recreate in the laboratory? What I'm going to show you here is the design of a lab experiment. There is another study tackle this question of the taking in the field, and we will focus here in the lab in the lab study. So the situation we created in the laboratory is basically the situation where in a participatory intervention usually takes place. So you have a resource management action situation in two parts, and in the middle of these two parts, or these two time periods, participatory intervention takes place. What is the one of the main features of this kind of intervention is that they don't necessarily alter the structure of incentives or the rule of the situation that is shaping individual behavior, but this conduct this kind of manipulation, trying to enhance the understanding of the situation by the stakeholder, or by inducing the perspective taking through this role reversal, which is the aspect, as I said, that we focus on. So the situation, the resource management action situation that we focus on is that kind of situations where a particular actor can unilaterally impose costs and benefits on other actors. And this is why we choose a dictator game situation, a modified version of the dictator game, where the take option is allowed. So let me explain briefly what is this event that we consider. So we have a situation with two positions, a dictator and a recipient. Both of them receive an initial endowment of €5, and the dictator is allowed to both give the dictators or receive an additionally €5, and that dictator is allowed to transfer this amount of money, these €5, but he or she are also allowed to take up to €5 on the recipient endowment. So that's the main variation of this situation. So the dictator can either transfer this amount or take up to €5 from the recipient endowment. So that's the baseline situation. And the participatory intervention we recreated in the lab, considering the features I mentioned, is that in the middle of these two stages in the experiment, so we have the stages where the dictator takes place for 4 rounds. Once the first stage is concluded, we conduct a simulation of fraction round that varies according to these two dimensions. In the first place, the way how the outcomes are displayed in the choice set of the dictator, and in the second place, how this role reversal is conducted. So let me show you how these manipulations are done. So regarding how this is the choice set. You can see the dictator see what the possible options are for him or her to choose from. And then the difference is that during this simulation round, they see not only the consequences of those decisions on themselves, but also on the other participants. And the way how the results are displayed are also modified. In the baseline, they only see what the results are, but in this simulation, they also see what the results of the other person are when the decision is made. And regarding the role reversal, we take two variations of this role reversal based on the social psychology researcher, especially in psychotherapy. And we have this reciprocal role reversal that is during this simulation round, and only during this simulation round, the recipient plays the dictator and the dictator plays the recipient. And once that round is played, they go back to their original position and they continue as it started. And we have another type of role reversal, which is that the dictator takes on the perspective of the recipient, but the dictator is played by the program, the computer. So the recipient acts as a witness during simulation round. So considering these two dimensions, we have these 3 times 2 factorial design because we combine these two dimensions, and we have so these 6 treatments, which are 6 different ways of conducting the simulation from depending on the way how the outcomes of the choices are displayed and how the role reversal is conducted. So let me summarize here the timeline of the experiment. So we have one section with 4 rounds. After that, the 4th round is concluded. We have a simulation round, and then we have the second part with another 4 rounds. In the rounds, and in the end, we apply a post-experiment questionnaire, and I will show you now what are the questions or the aspects we elicit in this last part. So in rounds 1, 4, and simulation round, the order is the transfer is done, so the administrator has the opportunity to make different choice. Then we elicit the beliefs about the other dictators, how they think other dictators will behave. Then we elicit the second order beliefs, how that is how the dictators think other what dictators think recipients are expecting from them. We elicit what they think somehow is the injunctive norm or the perception of what the fair transfer should be. Then the results are displayed, and then we have the end of the round. In rounds 2 and 3, dictators only make the transfer and display, they see the results, and the round is done. And we elicit the emotions in round 4 before the simulation round, at the end of the simulation round, and at the very end of the last round of the second section. And in the simulation round, the only thing that changes is, well, the discrete variables I mentioned are conducted there, and then we have the common steps that are followed in the rounds 1 and 4. So that's the timeline of the experiment. It's a partner design, so the participants and that pair of that grouping is preserved throughout the whole experiment. And dictators and recipients are located in different rooms. And the information that we elicit is individual characteristics. We apply the standard questionnaire about social psychology to elicit the dispositions for perspective taking and feeling concept for others. The inclusion of the other in the self-scale, and we have a set of focus questions in the end in order to get some information on what were the criteria driving their decisions and other questions related to that. So let me show you now some very preliminary results, and now I will tell you why they are very preliminary, because there is still a way of work to be conducted. So we have around 14 sessions. We have information for the 157 students. This of Osnabrück University. The experiment was run in the Laboratory for Economic Research in the Economics Department of the Osnabrück University. And but the idea, one of the aspects that we are to conduct is to expand the sample size, and now I'll show you why this is necessary, because the numbers we have now are not enough to make this inference in statistical time. I will show you now this. So, what is the general pattern of behavior? Here I am showing you the distribution of the decisions made by dictator in average in the 2 parts of the experiment. As you can see, the distribution very moves or very changes from one section to another. The only thing that changes a bit is that the amount of people transferring the fair split increases a bit. The same happened with the people taking everything from the endowment of the recipient, and also increases a bit the amount of the percentage of decisions regarding the decision of not giving or taking anything from other participants. So this is summarized in this other graph, because as you can see, 41% of the total sample did not change their decision, and then we have two types of data here, where 27% decide to transfer always -5, that is to take always the quality load with the recipient. 58% decided to transfer always the 2.5 of that, they even out the distribution of the endowment. And we have that 25% of subjects increase the amount transferred, and the 33% of subjects decrease that amount. So in the end, if we are to examine the effect of these manipulations of perspective taking, we need to focus on what's happening in these 25 and 33% of the sample, and we can see, as the literature shows, that both types of effects would be expected, that both the amount transferred increases or decreases. So I am not going to show you any statistical analysis, because as you can see here, if we analyze the distribution of these three types of change in the transfer, we have very few numbers distributed across all these treatments. So we need to increase the sample size so that we can specifically analyze what's going on regarding the subject that decided to decrease the amount transfer, or that decided to increase the amount transfer. But there are some that will be received in the that show us that perhaps the hypothesis that we have established at the beginning would be receiving some support from the data, and I will show you some of this area. But I am not claiming any sort of strong conclusion here, because this is mostly exploratory based on the sample that we have in this regard. In the end, what we have, based on our hypothesis, is that the specific change that we expect in the behavior will hinge on the specific experience during the role reversal. That is how the beliefs were adjusted, what kind of emotions were triggered. And so that's why it's important to focus on what's going on during that simulation run. And what we can see is that, and here I will only focus on the reciprocal role reversal condition, that is the condition where both participants exchange roles during the simulation run. And what we can see is that during this run, most recipients, the majority of recipients playing indicators, decided to transfer a positive amount during the simulation run. Yeah? And 35 subjects out of these 35 subjects of these recipients located in this role realized the split with a transfer of 2.5. So these recipients, the indicator, most of them decided to transfer and a positive amount, and that positive amount was the fair split. 4% made a transfer of 0, and 10 subjects, paying recipients, decided to transfer a negative amount. Out of the 42 subjects that receive a positive amount from recipient to the simulation run, we have that 15 subjects increase their transfer, and 8 subjects decrease the transfer. So even though the recipient behaved nicely somehow during this simulation round, not all indicators pointed in the same manner. When one goes to analyze what's going on with the beliefs and the emotions of these subjects, what can be seen is that from these 15 subjects that increase on average their transfer, 14 of them adjusted the beliefs regarding the expectations of the recipient. So 14 of these dictators believe that recipients would have now, after the simulation round, higher expectations. And 12 of the dictators expected that players in the role of dictators would now give an average more. So they expect recipients to receive more from them, and they also adjusted the beliefs positively regarding what are the dictators will do in the second part of the experiment. From the 8 subjects that decreased their transfer, we see that they also adjusted the belief regarding the expectations of the recipients and the proportion of players that thought that other dictators would give more was relatively smaller than the proportion of subjects that increased their transfer. However, these are low numbers, so no conclusion from here. And when one goes to analyze the associated emotional reaction, what one sees is that, in particular, from these subjects that increase in transfer, what is called the empathic and prosocial emotions, where the change in these emotions was negative after during the simulation process. So they decrease their empathic emotions and also the prosocial emotions, which is somehow consistent with what the literature says, that these emotions, empathic and prosocial emotions, are key to trigger helping and prosocial behavior once perspective taking is conducted. And finally, we have this information here, this inclusion of the average data scale is applied at the very end of the experiment. So we need still to analyze a bit more this information. But what is interesting is that when you see the scale, this scale goes from 1 to 7, when 7 is the closest relation perceived between the two participants. So we have that in average, all dictators were into dot 53. Somehow they don't feel that close to the recipient. But what you can see is that from the dictator receiving from the dictator that received a negative transfer during the simulation round, yeah, this measurement is even lower, and the dictators that received 2.5 in the simulation round, they got the highest average in this scale, which is again somehow consistent with what the literature says, that the expectation could somehow be related with a higher level of received closeness or similarities. So let me conclude by saying the following two remarks. In the first place, we can see two types of participants: subjects that exhibit already in the first section stable behavioral patterns. So there are some that decide to give to make the fair choice and they stay to that decision for the whole experiment. There are also those who take always the whole enrollment or the whole experiment. And there are some of them that change the decision throughout the whole experiment. And here is where it could be expected an effect from perspective taking. And in principle, what we can see is that in fact what is going on during the simulation run is that and the way how what goes on during the simulation run is there and interpreted is what triggers how the individuals react once the perspective taking manipulation is conducted. So just to close, the next steps are to have this calendar to increase. We need to conduct more sessions in order to be able to conduct further analysis. And in the second place is we are currently in a unit training where we analyze these dynamics in the context of upstream, downstream dynamics in the river watershed located in the Lima region in Peru. And we analyze there two types of perspective taking manipulation related to the African guidance. So I think that's all for it. This is the other co-authors I've been working with. And thank you for your attention. So, is there any questions? Comments? Yeah.
So there's two things going on here. You have two decisions being made with an intervention in between. Did you ever think of having in the middle taking out your simulations and just having them do a test like 2 mazes, 4 minutes? Because it could be that they're doing it a second time and they change anyway. So
Yeah, that's a good point. We have one of the actually we have two somehow control conditions. One condition is just to make in place the 2 parts of the experiment with nothing in between. The other control is to have a simulation run when they make the same decision. But again, it's a simulation run and with nothing else happening. Yeah, in order to control both
the fact that there's 2.
yeah, exactly.
Something I missed is what is different in terms of beliefs and the emotions elicited between the group that increase giving and the one that decrease giving. Because I got the impression that beliefs, the beliefs were the same basically, but they were changing beliefs very different behaviors, very different.
Yeah, that's a good point. But one thing is that yeah, basically they are somehow adjusting the beliefs in the same way. The thing is that again, the proportion of people that is adjusting the stable order beliefs or the expectation of the recipient is somehow similar in these two groups. The proportion of dictators expecting other dictators give more is a bit inferior in the group of dictators that is decreasing the views. But what we think is that the main source of change would be regarding the emotional part, because that's one somehow stark difference would be seen regarding because the only group that is reducing the empathic emotions or the social emotions comes from the group of individuals that are reducing but that's why it's important to consider these aspects in the joint analysis, because it is not only the individual, but also the group. Any other question? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here in Bogota presenting this paper, joint work with Zoe Cullen. The title of the paper is How Much Does Your Boss Make? So the big question for this paper or the topics is that of beliefs about the salaries of others. So let's say that Mariana and I are working in the industry or whatever, and she's my boss, and I must have some belief about how much Mariana is making. Okay? Let's say that I think that Mariana makes 10 times as much as I do. So now the question is, would that be relevant for my behavior? Would it change the way in which I go about my job? So one possibility is that I feel very envious of her. Maybe I feel that it's unfair that I do all of the work and she gets all of the credit for it. And because of that, I will, not be as productive. Maybe I won't reply to emails for the weekend, or maybe I may even sabotage like the company. Who knows? You could also have a more positive view of this, which is, well, maybe these employees are using those beliefs in order to form expectations about their future earning potential. So maybe I say, oh, Mariana earns 10 times as much as I do. That means that if I work hard and they promote me after 5 years of working hard, I will be earning 10 times as much as I do. So in reality, this may be very good news for me. I should be very happy when I learn that my managers make a lot more than I do. So the research questions are very simple then. One is, how do these employees in a real organization form this type of beliefs? Do they know how much their peers or their managers will pay? And the second research question is, what is the cause and effect of those beliefs on the day-to-day behavior? These forces are very relevant to understand at least two things. One is the causes and consequences of pay inequality. If you look at organizations, there are very, very large disparities in terms of what people at the top earn and what people at the bottom earn, and then whether those inequalities are there or not, that depends on where we think there are some types of spillovers when one employee gets paid more than some other employee. And it's also relevant because now that everything is digital and it's so easy to be transparent, to share with others information about incomes and so on and so forth, there may be a point at which government may want to use transparency policies in order to affect what the pay inequality looks like in organizations or some other outcomes that we care about, like, for example, the gender wage gap. Okay, yes.
It's about the horizontal or vertical?
Both of them. So our main motivation is the vertical one, but we keep the horizontal one as a metric. So, what happens when you learn that your manager makes 10% more than you do, relative to what happens when you learn that your peers, people in the same position, earn more than you do. And the effects will be largely different. I will show you in a second. So I will give you the broad overview of the research design and a summary of the results. Hopefully, I will give you a couple of details about the implementation. And you can take this as a trailer, and if you're interested, you can look at the rest of the paper. So what's the context for this experiment? This is a field experiment in a large commercial bank with 10,000 employees. The design of the experiment in a nutshell goes as follows. It has these 3 different steps. The first step, we went to a large sample of the employees of this bank, and we made them play games. And in those games, we can elicit this type of beliefs in an incentivized compatible manner. So, for example, I may go to one of Mariana's employees, and I can ask these employees, okay, what do you think your peers earn at this company on average? What do you think Mariana and Mariana's peers earn on average at this company? The employees can provide some guesses, and then, if they get close enough to the truth, they may get some monetary rewards for being accurate. And we also go at things like, for example, eliciting the willingness to pay for this type of information. So some employees, you're going to say, oh, do you want to actually learn how much Mariana makes? Okay, would you rather have this information of $10, this information of $200, and so on and so forth. After we have this object, which is the belief about the salaries of others, what we do is we try to generate some exogenous, some random variation in these beliefs. Okay, what we want to do is we want to nudge some people towards thinking that the managers pay a little bit more, or maybe a little bit less, and so on and so forth, in a way that is not necessary. Okay, we don't want to lie to employees, we don't want to tell them something that is not true. So for that, what we do is we do an information provision experiment. So you can imagine 2 hypothetical employees of Mariana, and both of them think that Mariana makes 5 times as much as me. Okay, so they start the experiment reporting those figures. And now what we do is the following. We say, look, we know because we have access to administrative records of the firm that Mariana is actually making 10 times more than the employees, not 5 times as much. Okay? So what we can do is we can flip the coin and we can say to one of the employees, who again was randomly chosen, we are going to tell this employee the truth. Oh, did you know that actually Mariana makes 10 times as much as you do? To the other employee, we leave that employee in there. We don't say it. So at the end of the survey, this is something that we can actually measure. We ask these questions about salaries perceptions, and we can see what happens. Where by providing information to one of the employees, we change the beliefs of this employee.
You have notion whether the employees, before you measure the salary perceptions, or after salary perceptions, or whether?
I will show you a graph of that. So I will tell you in the next slide summary of the result.
You can do something about framing in the way that you provide information here. Because you can tell them this is the actual amount. I don't know what you can do it, but you can give the exact number.
Yeah.
But what you were saying before is that you are telling them something like she's gaining more than 10 times the.
No, so we don't break that down. All the survey is about numbers. So you have to report some numbers in US dollars, and then you get some information in US dollars. So we don't make any explicit comparison. It's all about like a game with numbers. And we frame it as a game precisely because of that. We didn't want to impose a particular framing. We didn't want the employees to react to information because we were framing it in a particular way. So after we shift beliefs in this way, because of these information provision experiments, some employees will think that they will revise their beliefs upwards about their the salary of their peers or the salary of their managers and so on and so forth. Some of them will revise it downwards. So what we can use the return administrative data of the firm in order to see what the shocks to these beliefs, where the shocks to these beliefs translate into shocks to behavior. Okay, so let's say that we go back to this example with 2 employees, and one of them was randomly chosen to be told that they are, that Maria earns 10 times as much as they do, rather than 5 times as much as they do. We can follow these 2 employees, follow quote unquote, these 2 employees in the data and see what happens after they leave the survey. Okay, how many hours, minutes, and seconds do they spend in working in the company? We have the swipe data, so we know when the employees swipe into the office, when they swipe out, we can calculate that perfectly. We straight follow the email data of the employees, so what we can do is we can calculate at an hourly basis how many emails they send to the managers, to the clients, and so on and so forth. We can measure the sales performance of these individuals, how many credit cards do they sell, how many mortgages do they approve, and so on and so forth, so we can see whether there is any action there or not.
Do you do it with the direct boss?
So we do
Not with 2 steps ahead, or maybe like the next position but in a different branch.
So that's an excellent question because it turns out to be very important in the data. What we did is we more or less randomly assign you to ask you about the salary of either a boss that was right above you, someone that you can aspire to be promoted to within a year. And we also did it with some bosses that were farther away. So for some of these, when you ask people, what do you think is the probability that you reach this position in the next 5 years? They tell you a 5% probability. So this could be like someone who is at the bottom of a sales division, and we were asking them about the salary of like the VP of sales or something like that. Okay, so we have some people who are very close to their managers and some people who are
Do you use names or just the name of the position?
No, so we always do it with the name of the position.
Do you have any way to control for spillovers in the information provision? Like if I learn, after I leave, I go and I talk to my aunt, did you see that this person?
Yeah, so that's very interesting. So we were actually excited about finding this type of spillovers because that would mean that employees were learning from each other. So what we did is we rolled out the survey with the experiment during a period of 2 months. So what we can do is we can say, look, if I were to give you information to you, first of all, we can check whether it affects your own beliefs at the end of the survey. But you can also see whether it affects the beliefs reported by your friends, your co-workers. Let's say a week after we gave you information, a month after, or 2 months after, and so on and so forth. We can even do it with your closest peer because we have the swipe data. We can figure out the person that you go with for lunch the most often. So we can see whether, by giving you information, your best friend, your BFF within the company also learns more about the truth, and we find zero spillover. It was very surprising to us. It was so surprising that we actually did a follow-up experiment solely about that, trying to understand why is that employees don't share this information with each other, and we think that it has to do mostly with social norms about privacy, the salary level. Okay, so what's the preview of the findings? The first set of findings is about your question about whether the employees have misperceptions or not when they enter the survey, or before we give them any information whatsoever. And what we find is that there are less misperceptions. About the managers, employees on average tend to underestimate how much the managers make by about 15 to 20%. And some of them have very, very large misperceptions. So it's not rare for some employees to think that their managers make half as much as the managers actually make. For the peers, we find that perceptions, but they are not massive. Part of it is because you have a very good data point when you're thinking about the salary of your peers, which is your own salary. So what we find is that people they reported something different from their own salary, but in terms of how accurate they were, they did equally as well as if they just had reported exactly the same salary. So it seems that they were using some other information, but on average, that other information that they were using wasn't helping them to be more accurate when answering this question. We find a high willingness to pay for this information. when we do this exercise where we sell the information to employees, we find that even though a large fraction of the employees are willing to pay next to nothing for this information, when we sell the information to their bosses, they tell you, I'm willing to pay up to $1 or $2 for information, that's pretty much it. We find that a third of the employees are willing to pay days and even weeks worth of salary in order to acquire this kind of information. So this large misperception seems to us that they are not solely because employees maybe don't care, some employees don't care about information, some employees, they are telling us in a really preference way, we really care about this information. The reason why they have this possession must be because there are high information acquisition costs. And the other thing that we find is exactly what I described before, low information diffusion. So when we inject information in different nodes of the network of employees, we can check whether that information is bit source or not, and we don't see any diffusion of information whatsoever. So the second set of results are the ones in which we exploit this information provision experiment in order to measure the causal effect of the use of different forms of behavior. We can summarize the results in two parts. One is the part about the results regarding the comparisons with the salary of your peers, and the other one is the comparisons with the salary of your managers. When employees find out that, let's say, their peers on average earn 10% more than them, on average, that makes them less excited about work. They are, 1.5% less, 0.7% less likely to, when they find out that the peers earn 10% more, they themselves are 7% less likely to spend time in the office, they sell 7% less stuff for the company, they send 7% fewer emails to clients, and so on and so forth. So finding out that you're doing worse than your peers seems to be something that is largely demotivating for these employees. But when we look at the relationship with managers, we find the exact opposite effect. What we find is that when employees find out that their managers make 10% more than they thought, then those employees are on average 1.5% more likely to exert effort, 1.5% more likely to sell stuff in the company, they are more likely to stay in the company in the future, and so on and so forth. So it seems that when you're comparing yourselves to the salary of your managers, you're excited about finding out that your manager makes a lot of money. When you find that your peers do better than you do, then that's highly motivating. We have some suggested evidence of these mechanisms, the mechanisms why we see these type of effects. When we break down these manager elasticities by distance to the manager, we see very large differences. We see that when employees find out about managers that they can aspire to be in that position, let's say someone who is 2 or 3 promotions ahead of you, someone that within 5 years you can be that person, then that's where we see the most positive effect. The elasticities are twice as high as this one. But when you're asking employees about managers that are far, far away from them, people that you cannot really aspire to be in that position, we find elasticities that are very close to zero. We don't find any negative effects. It seems that even when you cannot reach the position of your manager, you are not envious of your manager, but we don't find any positive effects. Yes?
Those expectations of mobility of their peers.
Yes.
Because I would urge to know the differentiate with respect to peer effects of looking at your peers where you think this person's headed up to be a manager. I see versus this person is likely to staying at this level.
We don't have survey data about precisely that. I think that with objective data we will get a proxy for that because we know historically that there is more or less competition on some units versus others. The one thing that we do have which is related to that is we measure in incentive compatible way as well, expectations about your own future salary. And what we see is that there is a lot of action when people receive this type of information. So when Mariana's employees find out that Mariana makes a lot of money, and then you ask them, how much do you expect to earn yourself in 5 years in the future, we see a lot of positive action there. So it seems that they are doing this math in their heads, either consciously or unconsciously. So what we did, yes, that one was tricky. One possibility was to wait 5 years, check whether they got it right or not, and send a check. We thought they wouldn't trust us. So what we did is we told them, look, we have a really good algorithm that we used to predict, the salary of people 5 years ahead. So give us a guess, we are going to compare it to the algorithm, and we'll give you your number back. And we pay you based on whether you get close to our guess or not. So that was the easiest way that. So it's not perfect, but it's an approximation.
Might be motivating people.
What do you mean?
Oh, you way overestimated.
Oh, yeah. So when we give people, when we pay them for the whole survey.
Okay.
So all that you see at the end of the day is that, the bank deposited $30 into your account. You don't know whether these $30 are because you guessed this one right or this other question right. And to make this even more explicit, what we did is we told them, look, you got many of your questions right or wrong, but regardless of what the questions that you got, on top of that, we're going to give you a random payment, uniformly distributing between this and that. So in the end, they didn't get any feedback from the payment itself. So they don't know whether their guess for this particular question was good or wrong. So the suggested evidence seems to suggest that for the marginal elasticities, the salary expectation channel seems to be the most significant one. When it comes to the peer comparisons, we don't see a lot of action there. So when people find out that their peers make more money, they are not more likely to think that they themselves will make more money in the future. It could make sense in the sense that if you find out that you're underpaid, now you have more leverage to negotiate a raise with your managers. We do see a lot of action in terms of subjective questions about employee morale. So when we ask employees, are you happy with your job? Are you happy with your salary? Or we are asking employees whether they want more income redistribution within the firm, we see a lot of action there. So to us, it seems that for the horizontal comparisons, this type of MD or relative status channels are the ones that most likely explain what's going on. You had a question?
Well, yeah, so I was gonna ask about peer salaries, but, is it symmetric in the sense that, so what happens when you are making 10% more than your peers?
Yes, so we don't find any evidence of asymmetry. However, because of statistical power, we cannot reject some moderate difference either. So it could be that, positive effects are, the effect of positive updates are twice as large as, the effects of negative updates and so on and so forth. We just don't have a power over two. So for that reason, we just look at the asymmetric linear model when we do the baseline estimation. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip the research design and just give you some flavor of what the results are. So when I talked about the misperceptions, this is a histogram of misperceptions. This is the gap between the salary of the manager that you perceive, the one that you report in the survey, and the actual salary of your manager according to the Mason difference.
Yes, one institution. So what's the definition of diffusion, more and more institution? Are people, because in some companies, it's a company policy, you're not supposed to tell people what your salary is.
Yes, so about 60% of companies in the US, that's the case. In this company was also the case. I think you could make the argument for why, because HR was sponsoring the survey, they were giving you some permission or implicit permission in order to share information. So in that sense, the finding that we don't see employees sharing information with HR seems even more surprising. That's why we think that the reason why they don't share so much information, it has to do more with social norms of privacy. It's not really
it's not a company policy.
It should be a company policy, but even though we relax the policy during the duration of the experiment, in some sense, we still see no diffusion, so we think that it has to do more with social norms. So what you can see here is that very few employees get it right, get it within 5% of the group, only 12% of them do so. Most employees, they misperceive the salary of the managers by quite a lot. Some of them, they underestimate it very heavily. Some of them, they overestimate it. On average, they tend to underestimate it. If you do this with perceptions about the salary of peers, what we find is something that is not only much more compressed, but also centered around zero. So the most employees on average, they get it right, okay? Because you can see that most of the mass is in the middle, so if you were to take the average bias, it would be something very close to zero. So this is important because this means that if you are going to use income transparency, trying to affect the outcomes of the employees, then you may have some really limited scope there. The reason is that whenever you share information with employees, half of the employees will update down, half of the employees will update up. So on average, perceptions of the size of the peer will remain more or less the same. Okay, unless you find some asymmetries, you would expect that the average effect of transparency should be fairly close to zero. So the other thing that I mentioned is that there's no significant diffusion of information. Let me show you some results about the second part of the paper, the survey with a higher belief about the salary amount. The same is true for the salary. Yes.
They revised
Yes, so that's the next slide. So this is the revision in beliefs, and this is the initial gap in beliefs. So you can see that for people in the control group, the people who don't get any information, they don't revise, okay? They stay more or less the same. When they are randomly assigned to receiving the information, seeing the truth, what happens is that they revise almost 1 to 1. Okay, so when they find out that the salary of the manager is 5 million more than what they thought originally, they update upwards, maybe not exactly by 5 million, but on average by 4 million. And so, yes.
data on the social network employees in the.
No, we have data on the network of emails. That's our main proxy for the social.
And are you using that for the identification system?
No. So, okay. Maybe we can talk about that later. She had a question for you.
Is there uncertainty in the information? Is there uncertainty about the
Yeah, so we don't tell them the truth directly. We give them a very strong signal about the truth, which is the average salary among a random sample of 5 people in that position. So in reality, if people were fully Bayesian, they shouldn't have paid 1 to 1. They should have paid something like 9 to 1 or something like that. And that's very close to what we find. So in some sense, people are being very patient in the way in which they react to the information. So then, what we can do is, we can run these IB regressions using these random variation beliefs. Yes?
Just follow up this question. So when you have the network out of the email data, you apply the raw network from the emails, or you apply some filter, for example, emails in off hours. That's more likely, that network is more likely to be social network or emails with some words.
Yeah, so we don't scrape the content of the emails. All that we know is the identity of the employee. So we know that employee A sent the email to employee B and the exact timestamp for that. So we cannot do anything like that. For privacy reasons, we decided not to scrape the data. Okay, that's what I mean. So let me tell you where these elasticities of 0.15 and minus 0.7 come from. So they come from this regression. So what this more or less is saying is, by chance I were to convince a particular employee that the salary of his or her manager is 10% higher, that employee would work 1.5% more. That employee would sell 1.3% more emails, and that employee would sell about 1%, although this one is not statistically significant, more in terms of all of the products that they sell for the company. So we can do the same analysis for the peer side. What happens when I increase by 10% the belief about what your peers are making rather than the belief about what your managers are making? What we see is that these effects that are not only of the opposite sign, but also much larger in terms of money. So when you find out that you are underpaid by 10% with respect to your peers, you are 10% less likely to spend time in the office, you are 5% or 4% less likely to send emails to clients and your manager and so on and so forth, and you are 7% less likely to sell products for the company. So we see these very strong negative effects. One of the robustness checks that we do among many robustness checks is we run these placebo regressions where the outcome variable is not what your behavior is after you receive information, after you did the survey. The dependent variable is what's your behavior before you completed the survey. So you would expect that because we gave information within the survey, there should be no effect of that information on what happened before the survey. And what we find are all of these elasticities that are close to zero and statistically significant. So this is a sanity check that these effects are truly found. So we don't see any significant heterogeneity based on, let's say, gender and some other market characteristics. We don't see this being driven by a particular subgroup of the population. And we can also not reject the null hypothesis that these effects are symmetric and linear and so on and so forth. Although, again, because of power issues, there may be some asymmetries that we are not able to detect. So I will skip this and just go to the conclusions. So what we learned from this paper are two things. One is that employees seem to have lots of preconceptions about the salaries of other people in the company, and that per se is a very interesting finding that we're trying to explain in follow-up research. And we also find that these beliefs, that these perceptions, tend to be consequential because they affect the actual behavior of these employees, the actual performance and efforts of these employees in the company months after they find out about the information. And we also find this, which is the most interesting finding, in my opinion, which is that the effects of manager comparisons or vertical comparisons have the opposite sign than the horizontal comparisons. The way in which employees think about the salary of their peers is very different than the way in which they think about the salary of their managers. We think that can explain one of the most puzzling findings in the literature on employee compensation, which is that when you decompose inequality within the firm, 95 to 97% of inequality ends up being vertical inequality rather than horizontal inequality. No matter which firm you go to, most employees, if they hold the same position and they work for the same unit, no matter how different they are in terms of their productivity, they end up getting paid more or less the same. Whereas when you look at employees in different positions, after one employee gets promoted, it's not rare that the employee gets, double the salary and so on and so forth. So this can explain why firms decide to set incentives in this way. They say, look, if I pay employees in a particular position differently, I will see all of these negative spillovers. So even though the employee who got the raise gets more motivated, everyone else gets less motivated, and it's running to keeping the same place. Whereas if I say, look, the position above these employees is going to get a higher salary, all of these employees will find out, and like in a tournament model, they will decide to work harder in order to fight for that particular promotion. So that may be the reason why we see these patterns. The other reason, the other finding that we think it's important is, again, going back to these policy implications, thinking about these disclosure policies. Based on this data, we don't think that that these disclosure policies that forcing companies to disclose how much they pay their CEOs and employees and so on and so forth is going to have a huge effect. Just because of the fact that employees seem to be completely okay with their managers making much more than what they do, we don't think that based on this real preference data, that's going to be very effective in terms of forcing firms to compress their salary. Okay, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes. Yes.
Related to that is mobility.
Yes, so about the first part, because effects are symmetric and linear, in the end, if you increase or decrease transparency, the average effort is going to be more or less the same. So I don't think that transparency is going to make public employees more or less likely to work hard relative to the private ones. If anything, when it comes to vertical comparisons, maybe now it's easier for the junior faculty to find out that if you really get promoted to full, you get this huge salary, and because of that you want to make higher effort and so on. So if anything, I would say because there is more vertical transparency, maybe there is room for higher effort on average. Okay, yes. So I think that there is a scope for that, and in this particular experiment, you can look, for example, at the average chicken effect of just sharing information, forget about all of these elasticities, and you see that for the vertical comparisons, there is an average positive effect. So it seems that being more transparent about what you make with your employees may be a good idea for management.
Because of the university.
Yes, so employees in these companies are quite mobile, but all of these outcomes that we look at are outcomes that happen within 6 months after the survey. So during that period, you have maybe 4% of employees that move to another company, and maybe 2 or 3% that move internally. So we don't see a lot of action there, but there is not like a big margin there yet. So our hope is that we can update the data and look at what happens, let's say, 2 years after, and see whether that's an important margin.
Following up on that question, can you estimate kind of like what would be the net effect of transparency? Because if you get transparency, you might have negative impact from the peer comparisons, but positive impact on the vertical.
Yeah, so when we do those regressions, we find that for the peer comparisons, there is a zero effect. Because again, half of the peers are updating up, and half of the peers are updating down. So these effects cancel each other out. It's only for the managers that, on average, people are updating up, they get more excited and they work harder.
You mentioned that, I would think that the salary structure is important, how many steps there are. You mentioned something about this.
Yes.
Between where you are and the manager, because if that's very flat and then there's a jump up 3 steps ahead of you, in other words, you're working here for a promotion probably to the next level.
Yes.
So if the salary at the next level isn't great,
Yes.
and although the manager who's 5 levels above you is earning a lot more, it's not clear that you have a great incentive
Yes.
to do all of this once you learn there.
So far, we have 2 measures that we have been working on. One of them is just asking the employee, okay, look at this managerial position, how many promotions do you need to get there? So we do have that. And we also ask them a priority question, which is, what do you think is the likelihood that you will get promoted to this position within the next 5 years? So that is a approach. It's not perfect because, again, maybe you care a lot more now about people who are closer versus farther away. But we can break down the facts. We don't have enough power to do it by many levels. And here you have power to say, okay, this is the elasticity for people who are 1 promotion away, then for 2 promotions away, and so on and so forth. All that we can do is maybe split it in half, so we can see people within 1 to 3 promotions above you, and people within 4 and 8 promotions above you. And what we find is that all of these positive effects in the people right next to you, between 1 to 3 promotions, so it's perfectly in line with the effect. Yes.
There are other rewards that are non-financial, that are non-monetary rewards.
Yeah.
But how do you think it is going to play out if instead of sharing the salary, you probably share, I don't know, how many, status or other things that are not exactly monetary that the manager gets?
That's an excellent point. So I know from anecdotal evidence that HR tends to negotiate on that margin precisely because they don't want to mess up with horizontal inequality. So whenever an employee is asking a lot of money, they start saying, okay, we cannot give you that because we don't want to have too much inequality. Let's talk about some more things. So that may give you the sense that maybe they believe that employees are not so envious about those other margins, but that's a speculation. Maybe HR people are wrong and people are actually more jealous about the size of the office because you see it every day versus the, whatever salary you get and so on and so forth. That would be an excellent treatment arm to add to this experiment. Unfortunately, it's too late, but that I think is a very nice question for the future.
Coming to a close for the Bogota Experimental Economics Conference. We want to thank you all for coming here.
Hello.
We've had a great conference. We want to thank all three keynote speakers. And we want to thank all the RAs and the administrative people from the university who helped make the logistic and all the event possible. So please, let's give them a hand. We're going to have our last keynote lecture today by Professor James Andreoni. And James Andreoni does not need any introduction. And they say that the trouble of people who don't need any introduction is that they often don't get any introduction. So we'll introduce him, but we'll make it short. He's professor of economics at the University of California, San Diego. His PhD from the University of Michigan. He has served in editorial roles in several journals, including the Journal of Public Economics. He's the past president of the Economic Society, a member of the NBER Society and Society for Economic Theory. In addition, he's top economist in the U.S. And I think I should stop now, or otherwise I'm gonna eat into the. Thank you very much.
All right, well, Diego, Mariana, everybody else, thank you so much for putting this together and including me. One more thing to put on my resume. So this is a joint work with this esteemed group of folks. Doug Bernheim, of course, that name you recognize, and the others are students or former students of Doug Bernheim. This has been in the making for a while, but we're very happy with the outcome, I think. But so before I tell you too much what the paper is about, I'm going to ask you to participate with me, and I won't ask anybody to tell me what they're thinking, but just think about it. So nobody gets put on the spot. But suppose that we have two equally deserving poor people, and we're going to have $10 prize we're going to give to one of these two people. And we're going to determine who gets the prize by using lottery tickets. Okay? There's the yellow tickets and the red tickets. And I'm going to give you 10 yellow tickets, and I'm going to assign the 10 red tickets through some computer is going to make this decision for us. Okay? And then, only one of the 20 tickets is the winner. Right? So just think about this. But before you make your decision about how you allocate yours, I'm going to let the computer move first. And the computer puts all its 10 tickets on household B. You control these other 10 tickets. How do you want to allocate those? So this is the easy question. Everybody answers this the same way. They say, I would give all my tickets to household A. Okay. Okay. So now I say to you, now I'm going to draw the winning ticket. But before I do that, you know what? It turns out all the red tickets, those are all losers. It turns out. Okay. So those don't count. Only yours count. So before I reveal the winning ticket, are you still happy with your allocation, or would you like to rearrange that allocation? Now think about what you do, and if you are like most people I ask this question of, and like our subjects, you say, well, no, I'm not so happy. I want to rearrange this. I'm going to give 5 to the other side. And you'll say it's because I want to keep both people in the game. I want to give both people a chance. I want to maintain a chance for both folks. Okay, so ex ante to learning about the winning color of the tickets, you prefer a 50-50 split. Okay, so you allocate tickets for an equal probability. So that's like equality of opportunity. You want to keep both people have equal chances of getting it. So otherwise we can call that ex ante fairness. Okay. So so that allocation 10-0 makes sense ex ante to learning about the red or blue tickets, red or yellow tickets. Well, if you say that fairness requires you to do this, this violates the independence axiom. You should be indifferent to the probabilities. It's $10, should be linear in probability, right? So if you are strictly preferring an equal probability here, you're violating the independence axiom. So this rules out using expected utility as the explanation for or a description of your preferences. Okay. Ex post to learning the winning ticket's color, but before you learn which ticket is the winner, if you feel that fairness requires revising allocations of your yellow tickets to return the odds of 50-50, that's what most people do, right? That's most people. They feel that this is a necessary, morally or personally, they believe that's a necessary action to take. So this is equality of outcomes. So ex post to getting this information, you want to equal the outcomes. That's why you would return things to 50-50. So we call that ex post fairness. Right? So we get new information, we update, and we rearrange those tickets. This violates another key principle of decision making, which is time consistency. You make a plan, and you should stick with it. So let's see how this violates time consistency. So if you're in an ex ante situation and you choose like this right here. Now, if we talk about the ex post game, where I first tell you that the reds are all losers and the yellows are winners, now you can rearrange them in a different way. But if you look at what this means for the odds over in the beginning here, you have a 50-50 odds, but now here you have 50% chance that A wins, then 50% chance you go up here, 25% chance that A wins there, so now you've given A a 75% chance of winning. So your ex ante preferences were to give A a 50% chance of winning, but when you revise ex post, you're giving A a 75% chance of giving, and B an only 25% chance of giving. Okay, so your ex post self is inconsistent with your ex ante self. Right, so this is the basic observation that we have. That ex ante to learning the color, people reveal they basically prefer a coin toss to determine the outcome. But what I did when I told you the red, or it was the yellow tickets, not the red tickets, I basically flipped the coin. I gave you the 50-50 gamble, and it came up that one household won, and we could have ended right there, satisfying your preferences. But instead, people to express a preference for a second coin toss, which now violates their initial preferences for a 50-50 chance for the two players. Right, so their ex post self has preferences that are not consistent with the ex ante self. So if a subject is a consequentialist, and I'll talk about these things in more detail, the subject it would be valid to choose ex ante fairness ex ante with no revision ex post. Okay? Or you could choose ex post fair. You could split your tickets to 50-50 ex ante and just leave them there, not revise them, thinking of it as the contingent plan. My allocation is only going to count if I have one of the winning tickets. So I should ignore the fact that I might not have a winning ticket, or that the other tickets might be the ones that win. I should just say my decision is only going to matter if one of the winning tickets is in my hands, in which case I'd want to allocate the 5-5 instead of the 10 and 0. Right. So those are both valid ways of deciding what your distributed preferences are here. Both would result in basically a coin toss between the two. So the objectives of this paper are to document this kind of behavior that we just, I didn't see into your heads, but I'm imagining that you're like most people I talk to, that you fell into this little trap that I laid for you. So we're going to document these kinds of time inconsistent preferences, and then we'll try to distinguish two possible explanations for why this could crop up. So one is that people have consequentialist preferences, but time inconsistent preferences. Okay, so the other one is the converse of that. They have non-consequentialist preferences, but time consistent preferences, although they have time inconsistent choices. So I'll try to make all this confusing bit of lingo a little more clear, but it's going to be hard to make it less confusing as you go along. So bear with me on that. So what do we mean by consequentialist? So somebody who has consequentialist preferences depends, their utility depends only on the final consequences, on the final outcomes. Nothing about the process or the actions taken along the route to get to that outcome. Okay, so things like pure altruism or inequality aversion don't really care about how you get to some allocation. That just utility just depends on what the allocation is. Preferences that are not consequentialist, if the ultimate utility depends on some way about the process of how you got there. So if you have impure altruism or warm glow kind of preferences, you care that it was, you care whose money it was. It matters where the source of that money comes from to determine your utility. If you have other sort of social payoffs like audience effects or reputation, social image, these kinds of things, these are not about the final allocation of consumption. There's utility in the process of determining the final allocations. Okay, so those are examples of non-consequentialist utilities. So we've heard these words in a number of lectures talks we had this week, yeah, I believe it was yesterday, somebody talked about deontological preferences. And the idea of this is that its roots are from the Greek for duty or obligation. The idea, this is a moral philosophy. You say you have moral preferences that are deontological if they are, say, like rule-based. So I'll treat others the way I would like them to treat me. That's an example of a deontological moral principle. Non-consequentialist includes things that are deontological, but goes beyond that. Okay, so it includes things like trying to impress other people or worrying about what people think about you. Those kinds of social payoffs that you might get. When ex ante fair allocation and ex post fair allocations are not the same, then we have a hazard of having time inconsistent choices. Okay, so that's how we're going to look at this. So explanation one for seeing these time inconsistent choices. So one is that we have consequentialist preferences, but time inconsistent, but they're also time inconsistent preferences. So assume we have consequentialist preferences. So for example, expected utility. We don't really care whether you draw a number out of a hat or roll the dice or flip the coin 3 times. You care what the probability, ultimate probability, and the prize is. So that's consequentialist utility. So so if we simplify things in the normal way, the utility of a household is positive if they win and 0 if they lose, say. And so we let people get these probabilities. So the decision maker will maximize his expected utility. But if we've chosen to, so I haven't told you anything about the poor people that we're helping here. You have no reason to favor A over B, so it makes sense to assume that UA and UB are going to be the same for the decision maker. If that's the case, then the decision maker should be indifferent to P because it's expected utility, and it should be indifferent to revising. Right? So any allocation is just fine. Yes.
About the revising, I'm wondering about the inconsistent preference term. Can it be like very consistent if my preference is to revise according to each moment's feedback? So my preferences every time is like to give like 50-50 to each household, independently of the past.
So we're trying to come up with basically a utility function or utility that's going to get us that result. But your preference is always to return everything to 50-50 every time, and that this is time inconsistent because it conditional on having gone down this path. Now the probabilities ex ante are going to be different than what you favored last decision, right? So this might be the easy, natural way to think that we would solve the problem, but this can't work if we have preferences that strictly prefer returning everything to 50-50, ex post to getting more information. Okay, so a strict preference for P equals 0.5 ex ante, and or for revising ex post contradict expected utility as the explanation for this phenomenon. So we have to think a little bit more deeply and creatively. So what are examples of non-expected utility that will be consequentialist? So probability editing is one of those options, right? So it also just really cares about these final probabilities and the outcomes, but it's not time consistent. So this has been well known for a long time that non-expected utility models can lead to time inconsistency. So here's, if you have this form of prospect theory, there's just some f of p, which is our new weighted probability, and f of p for b, another weighted probability. And those f's are the same function, so it's old school probability or prospect theory. And if u of a and u of b are the same, then p equals 50-50 is always going to be the solution here. Okay, another example is the second one here, where you have utility of the expected values. That also seems like a natural way to think about how this would work. So you'll take their perspective, so the expected utility of the two players. And again, if this u function is symmetric, so it treats x and y the same, and if, so if it's u of x and y equals u y of y and x, so you have the symmetry, and again, the decision maker is going to favor 50-50 odds. Okay. So these are, and will prefer to revise ex post. Okay, so those are the kind of behavior that we're talking about, and it has that problem of time inconsistency. Okay. Let's see, where's, okay. So explanation 2 is we have non-consequentialist preferences and that are time consistent in a way I'll make clear soon, but time inconsistent choices. So it's been long established that non-consequentialist preferences can lead to preference reversals. And so if you're non-consequentialist, you can have time-consistent preferences in the sense of making a future plan and sticking to that. So your plan from the start could be, I'm going to allocate 50-50, then I'm going to reallocate to 50-50 ex post and be time inconsistent. That's going to be my plan, my intention. I'm fully aware of it, and that's what I'm going to do. So because I make that plan, I stick to it, I'm time consistent in my preferences. I'm not time consistent in my choices. And we observe the choices. Okay, so for example, if a person's ethical determination, if it's a person's ethical determination to make every allocation decision as if this were the last decision I was ever going to make regarding these two people, right? Then I'm going to forget the fact that this is going to change my ex ante probabilities when I revise them ex post. I'm not going to care about the past self, as you're suggesting. I'm going to have this ethical principle that I'm going to, if I can have any, I'm not going to accept any past coin flips. I'm always going to want one more coin flip. That's just what I think. Then this could explain what we're looking at. So I think that's, so this person will have a plan to always make those changes. So it's internally consistent, but to the outside observer, we have time inconsistent choices, even though it's time consistent preferences. All right. So note that if you're non-consequentialist, it's very often likely for you to have time inconsistent choices, but it's not necessary. So Mark Machina provides a compelling example of this where non-consequential preferences can display time consistency, and it depends on whether the decision makers are resolute in their preferences. So Mark has a famous story that people know about, I'm sure, it's called the Machina's mom problem. Now, Mark Machina is a colleague of mine. He works 2 doors down from me. He stops by every day to tell me a joke. It's always a bad joke, but I always enjoy it. I look forward to it. I know Mark well enough to know that the Machina's mom parable is really somewhat autobiographical. So I've changed the names a little bit to suit the story, be a little more realistic about this. Mom has 2 kids, Abby and Ben, otherwise known as Mark. She has one treat that she'd like to give to her children, and she'd like to split it in half, but you can't divide it. It's got to go to one child or the other. She doesn't want to throw it away, but she doesn't want to make the decision herself either. So she strictly prefers flipping a coin to decide who gets the prize. So mom flips the coin. So notice, first of all, that mom is violating expected utility because she strictly prefers the 50-50 coin flip to just making the decision herself. So she's a non-consequentialist because this path to the allocation matters. So she flips the coin and Mark loses. And Mark, being precocious, says, Mom, you prefer a coin flip to handing the treat to Abby yourself, so you must flip the coin again. Clever little guy. And Mom, however, is resolute in following her plan, and she says, sorry, kiddo, you had your chance. Abby gets the treat. I'm not going to flip the coin again. So mom is non-consequentialist. She's time inconsistent in her preferences, but because she's adopted this resolute stance towards her future plan, she will appear time consistent. Now, there might be some unmodeled aspects of this. The parents in the room will probably guess some reasons, other reasons why you would want to be resolute about your plan here. But that aside, this is something we have to be on the watch for as well, as something that'll maybe be in our data. All right, so these are the two ways we have to explain our data. You can have decision makers who have consequentialist preferences, but are non-expected utility preferences and time inconsistent. Decision makers who have non-consequentialist but time consistent preferences. Okay, so we're going to try to see if we can distinguish which of these is most likely to be explaining our data, or the biggest share of our data. We find that approach 2 is stronger. That non-consequentialist is a much better explanation for this kind of behavior. And that has lots of implications for us, I hope to argue. There's previous literature, which unfortunately I'm not going to go give due time to. But I will tell you that our study is unique in the field in that our subjects do not have any stake in the outcome themselves in the sense of getting any payments that depend on their decisions. They get paid a flat rate, I think $10 for being in the experiment. No previous study generates choice reversals the way we do here, or examines preferences for commitment or strictness of those preferences, and we're going to look at all those things because they're important to distinguish these two stories. Okay, so we partner with a charity called Give Directly, and I do that for a couple of reasons. One is because one of the co-founders of this charity is Professor Paul Niehaus of the Department of Economics at UC San Diego. Right, so we could put his picture up and show it to the students, and they should be much more, we hope they'll be convinced that the money is really going to go to Give Directly, and it does. But we also choose them because the objective of the charity is to give direct cash transfers to poor people who live in Africa. And at the time we're doing this, they were busy in Kenya, giving money to the people there. They've set up operation in Uganda as well. Paul was very nice in giving me a whole megabytes of pictures of the people who are recipients of their money. So we could use those as part of the stimuli in the experiment. Okay, so people in the experiment are told there are 2 households in Kenya, call them A and B, and they have, one of those will receive $10. And as in our example, there are 20 lottery tickets, and you have 10, the computer has 10, the computer will always move first, we'll tell you what the computer did, and then you get to move second. And then things may be different after that, about what we tell them, all right? And only one of the 20 tickets is going to count. So the ex-ante task allocates tickets without knowing if the winning ticket is among your own as a subject. The subject knows the computer allocation when she makes the decision. The ex-post task is we tell you have 10 tickets, and we tell you whether or not you have one of the winning tickets. We don't do that first stage. You just go straight to the second stage. Okay, you don't have a ticket, you sit still this time. You're not going to make any decisions. Let's do this again. You have the winning ticket in your 10 this time. Now you make a decision. Okay, so we have 4 these that we go through, and in exactly 2 of the 4, you get to make a decision, and 2 of the 4 you have to sit out. Okay. So those are ex-post tasks. So I'll often refer to these as the ex-ante frame and the ex-post frame. Then another type of task we have is the ex-ante with surprise revisions. And this is what we did in the room here today. So we first have them allocate the tickets ex-ante. Then we say, you either do or do not have the winning ticket among yours. Would you like to revise your allocation? And that's what this ex-ante with surprise revision does. Right, so they face 8 decision tasks of varying types. Each household, they get assigned households each time. We don't really tell them which one. We say, here's here's the spate of pictures you'll look at. Your households A and B are picked from this set. So they don't even know which ones they are, so they can't favor one over the other. The computer allocation varies from round to round. So we have these 8 rounds, and the allocations are 7 to 1 and 3 to the other. So if the subject wants to equalize the probabilities of winning, they have to give 3 and 7 when there's 7-3.
So how do you actually be sure strict preferences? Do you have to pay?
Yes, I'll get into that. But they don't pay. The subjects in Africa pay. Right. So we say, if you want to revise, you have to. We're only going to have $9 to share to allocate. Right? Do you still want to revise? And we start that at 10 cents and work it up to $5, and we get remarkably strong insistence on switching, revise, things like that. Okay, so if they're gonna, if you want to equalize things, when the computer does 2-8, you do 8-2, and so on and so forth. Okay. So here's an example of the screen they might see, and we pick a set of subjects, potential recipients who they're all the same. So we have another one where there's a mom and 2 kids, and others where there's a husband and a wife. All these pictures. So there's no reason to favor one over the other, and besides, we're not going to tell you which one is the one you're assigned to. But to sort of make it more real, we show them that these are the kinds of people they're going to be giving this $10 to. This is the ex ante instructions. The important part is, let's see, yeah. So we don't say anything about revisions here. In the ex post instructions, we say the first thing we tell them is the winning ticket this round is definitely one that you will decide. You will assign. So each of your tickets now has a 1 in 10 chance. The computer assigned 7 and 3. We say. So we're 7 for household A and 3 for household B. All right, so we go straight to that. Okay. So and when we do the ex ante with revisions, we do both of these steps. Okay. This is the kind of decision screen they might see when there's a 7 and 3 allocation. The first 10 they assign, so they fill in the dots on the top 3, and the bottom 3 are all fixed because those are the computer's choices. All right, I think that's pretty straightforward. So here are the questions we ask. So to distinguish these 2 theories. So question 1: does the initial frame affect the initial allocation? So do people just come in being ex post fair minded or ex ante fair minded? No, it depends on what frame they're first shown. If I first show you an ex ante frame, people will be ex ante fair. If I first show you an ex post frame, you'll be ex post fair. So you might think of that as between subjects demonstrating this time inconsistency. Does framing of initial decision tasks affect allocations in later decision tasks? So if I first show you an ex ante frame, do you adopt ex ante fairness after that? You sort of get stuck in that mode, and so you're consistent thereafter. No, you're not. People move around as the frame moves around. Do competing fairness motives generate choice reversals? Well, yeah, yes, they do. Does exposure to both frames reduce prevalence of choice reversals? So it might be that the first time that you've had a bunch of questions about only ex ante fairness, suddenly you get this chance to revise. Does that make you stick with ex ante fairness? So does that reduce the choice reversals? Because now I want to stick with ex ante fair. No, people switch very freely. Does commitment resolve time inconsistency? So this is typically the test. The gold standard test for time inconsistent preferences. That people, when we have like present bias kind of things. So if you can commit to, you can't resist revising things later on. Give you a chance to commit now. You should accept that. Okay, so we offer them a free chance to commit time consistent behavior, and they don't care. Are timing consistent choices strictly preferred? So I'm not going to show you a lot of the data on this. You'll just have to take my word for it because it's a choice I made because of time constraints. But anytime we're interested in whether there's strict preferences, what we do is we say to the subjects, you can make a different decision or not make the decision, whichever one we want to test. You can not revise, or you can say revise, or you can choose 50-50 odds, or we can just give it to household B. And to do that, or you can stick with what you're doing. If you stick with what you're doing, we're going to reduce the payoff from $10 to by 10 cents, reduce it by 25 cents, 50 cents, $1, $2, $4. And huge numbers of people, large fractions of people will be willing to forego $1 or $2 for this poor household in Africa to stick with their time inconsistent strict preferences. So to begin with, these are the treatments we're going to do. So this is a little bit of notation here that hopefully you can catch on to pretty quickly. So in the first one, we say, we use the letter A to mean an ex ante framing condition, and the letter P to use an ex post framing decision. And the A to the R is a ex ante with a surprise revision. So we have a little dash here because we have 8 choices. There's 4 that happen before the dash and 4 that happen after the dash. So in this one, you play 2 ex post fairness frames. Then you see 2 ex ante fairness frames. Then we take a 2-minute break, and we play 4 ex ante frames with surprise revisions. Surprise revisions means that you play all 4 in the ex ante frame, and that's all done. We say, well, let's go back and revisit these. Oh, here you got, we're going to tell you that your ticket counts. The next one, your ticket doesn't count, and you can revise on those cases in surprise revision. Okay, so we start off with doing all ex ante in the first 4, followed by revisions in the second 4 ex post only first, followed by 4 with revisions. They're always followed with 4 with revisions, ex ante frames with revisions. Then we mix it up, ex ante, ex post, ex ante. That's to just give you experience of saying that you make different decisions in these two different frames, and that's hopefully it will shock people into realizing their folly of their choices, the time inconsistent, and they'll want to rectify that. Okay. So this is we're gonna characterize our decisions by our subjects by putting them in particular bins to help us understand their motives. So just imagine that the computer has assigned 8 tickets to subject A. Okay, so what would our subject do here? Well, if they're interested in ex post fairness, they should split things 5-5. Okay, so my allocation of tickets is only going to matter to me if I have the winning ticket. Therefore, I'm going to give 5 to both the households, no matter what the computer does. Okay, so this ex post fair outcome is always going to be that 5-5, no matter what treatment we're in. Right? Ex ante equalizing would be to fully offset what the computer does. The computer gave 8 to household A, you give 2, you bring it up to 10, then you give the rest to the other household. So each household now has 10 tickets. So ex ante fairness is going to chase around the computer every time and do the exact opposite of what the computer did, to get 10 each. Okay, if we're slightly off, so these are where most of the data is that we're going to see, and I'll show you how we present this stuff. But just so you know what else we did. If you're between these two things, you're sort of partial offsetting. You're kind of splitting the pie a little bit. You could be overcompensating, so going past what the ex ante equalizing outcome would be, or you could go the other direction. We'll call that reinforcing. Okay, so you're making it more unfair in the other direction. Okay, so little details. We did this all at UCSD. About 20 subjects per session, and about 45 minutes, and we paid everybody $10 for participating. Okay. So question 1. So we're going to go through those 5 or 6 questions we had to start off with. Does the initial frame affect the initial allocation? So we're going to compare the first 4 rounds of the treatment of 4 ex ante choices. Okay, so we'll have 4 observations per subject. People are sensitive to they're insensitive to the framing because they're time consistent. All these pictures should look the same. Right? If they're not influenced, If they're not influenced by any of the sequence of choices they made, all the ex ante cases should look like all the ex ante cases, and all the ex post cases should look like all the ex post cases. So when we graph all these things to help you see, we color the ex ante ones white background and the ex post ones with the gray background. And if you just compare the white boxes, those are remarkably similar. So by the way, I'm not going to recite any statistics here, because if I say it's significant and it looks significant, you probably wouldn't even have thought to ask me for what's the chi-squared test on that thing, because they're out of the park, so significant. So you see that this is where the ex ante fair outcome is, and then the ex ante frames, that's where the data all lines up, and from one to the next they're all the same, independent of whether they saw ex post frames before that. And a real interesting one is this, where they see ex post and ex post, and then we do the ex ante with revision, and they all go to a different spot. Okay, so as hard as we try to get them to be consistent with a particular point of view, they in the end they all look the same over here. Okay, so generating choice reversals. Do competing fairness motivations generate choice reversals? Okay, so we'll look at the ex ante versus the surprise ex post revisions choices for the same decision task. So you can focus on the last 4 rounds of this one here, where you do 4 ex ante first, then 4 ex ante with surprise revisions. And, right, and see if even here they've seen no ex post frames at all here. Will they still end up choosing that? Yeah, in fact, they do. So here's in the initial allocation where we see ex ante fairness, and here's where we give them a chance to revise, and lo and behold, most of them revise over to here. If you look at just those that revise, it's approximately true that if you revise your choices, you revise to this ex post fair allocation. And so these things are incredibly strong in attracting people's allocations. Okay, so these choice reversals this would be the most challenging case to find them, and then they pop up like crazy, or they're ex post fair like champions. I think somebody said that earlier. It's a nice line, I think. So you can look at the joint distribution of initial and final choices. So each one of these boxes has a heading on top, and see the one that says ex ante equalizing. That's what they did on the first choice, and then of those people who did ex ante equalizing, they do on when they could revise. Okay, so this is a conditional probability. So first of all, you can see that as we saw in the last picture, a lot of data is right here, but within this, a large fraction of the folks switch. When they switch to ex post framing, and there's really not enough data anyplace else to worry about. Okay, so next we want to worry about being aware of both frames. So does the exposure to both frames reduce the prevalence of choice reversals? So we had these conditions where we did 2x. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, so we'll compare the last 4 rounds in all treatments. So in all treatments except the one that was 4A and 4A with revisions, all the others had some ex post in it. But that doesn't really matter. Because if you were ex ante equalizing in the beginning, they're a little more equal right there. But here's the one where they saw no ex posts at all before that, and that's one of the highest ex posts equalizing. Okay, so the fact that you've seen ex post fairness before doesn't make you more likely to choose it when you hit the second 4 rounds with the time and consistent opportunities. All right, so now we want to make sure that these preferences that we're observing are strict preferences. It could be that, I really don't care about probability, so 50-50 says just a fine, sounds good, but I don't really care. So we need to check that these things are things that people want, that if they are tempted to choose it when they would rather not revise. So we're going to add a possibility for commitment. So first we'll do, let's see. So we're going to add a new kind of task, which is ex ante with commitment. So we tell you that what we're going to do is you make an ex ante choice, and then we're going to reveal whether you have one of the whether you have one of the winning tickets, and give you a chance to revise, unless you tell us not to do that. So you can commit ahead of time to not revising. And we asked just with these, I definitely want a chance to revise, definitely do not want a chance to revise, or I don't care. So, so what we do is give them 4 runs at ex ante with surprise revisions. Then we tell them we're going to do that again, but it's not going to surprise. We're going to give you a chance to revise again, unless you tell us you don't want to do it. So this one was a little surprising for us, in a really interesting way, I think. And I think rather than read all these numbers off here, I'll show you the where's the picture on that one? Yeah, here it is. So we've got so we have the, let's see, the gray is commitment, the white is indifference, and the dark is flexibility. I want the opportunity to revise. On the top list here, I have the people who have revised twice and always from ex ante to ex post. So those are the people, if they're tempted, they should have the highest demand for commitment. They have the highest demand for flexibility, and almost the lowest demand for commitment. Right? This is the lowest demand is for people who maybe aren't sure. Right? So they revised twice. Never to, well, this gets muddied. So for sake of time, let's just go to the last one. This is never revised. These are subjects who were never revised. Who are they? Well, they're resolute. Okay, so they have no problem doing what not revising. What do they demand here? They demand commitment. They don't need it. Okay, so this is a evidence, I would say, that people are likely resolute in their ex ante allocations or ex post allocations. Whatever fairness perspective they take, they stick with it. So basically, as we go from people we'd expect to have high demand for commitment to people with low demand for commitment, we get the exact opposite in the ordering of commitment demands. So this tells us that people who are time inconsistent with their choices don't want to prevent themselves from doing that. They welcome the chance to do that, in fact. All right, so now here's I think the most convincing test that we have non-consequentialist preferences here. So this is a new kind of decision task. And what we do here is we say, well, you're going to make an ex ante decision. And then we're going to reveal information, and you'll get a chance to revise. You can write down now your plan for the future. If it comes up that you have the winning ticket, do you want to revise, and what do you want to revise to? So this is a real test of whether what they really want to do ex ante. They want to be time inconsistent. Right? So they play 4 ex ante, and then 4 ex ante with planned allocations in the future. So the time consistent consequentialist, yeah. So they should. I think this is clear. You should either make a plan that commits you to not revising, or you should make a plan that states explicitly that you want to revise. If that's the latter, that means you're non-consequentialist, but time consistent, in that you're making a plan to be time inconsistent and sticking with it. And sure enough, the initial allocation over here is ex ante fair, and the plan is, in the event that I have the winning ticket, I want to revise to 50-50. Now, isn't that a crazy thing, right? So I'm going to flip a coin. When we have 50-50 odds. I'm going to flip a coin, but then you want me to flip it again. Right? So it seems quite clear that this is the kind of preferences that we're dealing with. If people know what they're doing, and they're being time inconsistent deliberately. All right, so we can summarize what we have here is that allocations are sensitive only to the current frame they're in. So it's as if people have adopted this value that they're going to treat each decision as if it's the last decision they're going to make, and it's the one that's going to be carried out. Within decision tasks, choice reversals are very common. Commitment and contingent planning treatments support the non-consequentialist and time-consistent preferences that nonetheless have time-inconsistent choices. So what does this mean, and why is this interesting and important, and why am I here? I can't answer the last one. But I'll try to answer the first couple of questions. So let's take an example. Suppose these kinds of preferences extrapolate to other kinds of things you might demand in society. So suppose, for instance, that the government designed a social insurance program that's second best optimal, which means that they have to worry about some moral hazard issues. So there's some risks that they're not going to insure. They're not going to fully insure. Okay. So if you do something that's totally irresponsible that you shouldn't be doing, and just to get just because you have insurance, we're going to make you pay for some of that. But if a charity's out there, for instance, and they see, so you built a house on a floodplain, right? That was really stupid. You don't want anybody building houses on floodplains. We're not going to bail you out if you build a house on a floodplain and get flooded. Okay, the TV cameras come down there. There's the families holding the shivering babies. What are you going to do? Oh my God! You're the charity. You're supposed to help people who are in dire straits. Of course, you're going to help these people. Now you've just destroyed this optimal insurance program for the government. So your ex post fair preferences destroy your ex ante efficient social insurance program. Okay. So the government can be credible in making a law that says we can't do this, but it can't make a law that says you can't express. If you have free speech, money is speech in America. You get to give your money to whoever you want. And ex post fair to help people who built their houses on floodplains, even if that was really stupid. Okay. In general, you can say that if you have time inconsistent fairness preferences, it can create cycles. Ex ante, we think this is right, then ex post. So we'll do something that's a great redistributive program. We're going to have Social Security, help people keep out of poverty when they're old. Well, it's old, and I've had a really lucky career. I make a good salary. I don't need the Social Security stuff. Let's stop paying these taxes. And my preferences can change depending on what my outcome is. So we can get cycles where we do nice things and then we take them away. Or at least we have pressures to do these things. Our results provide a valuable distinction between preferences and choices. So choices can be time consistent, even if preferences are time inconsistent. I guess I read the second one first. Or choices can be time inconsistent, even if preferences are time consistent. So you can have both of those things, and they have different interpretations. So what we found is that it's best to describe preferences, best to describe things as choices being time inconsistent, but preferences being time consistent. Yes, preferences being time consistent, because I make a plan and I stick with it. So even I'm getting confused about this stuff. All right. So this is true that people have these non-consequentialist preferences. Then maybe we should think more carefully about non-consequentialism in fairness here and other kinds of social pro-social behaviors. So do non-consequentialist fairness preferences transfer to other kinds of pro-social choices? So if so, that means we have to think refine the way we think about these kinds of activities to be about things that are non-consequential, that are driven by concerns other than just the outcome of the process. So there could be ethics of obligation and duty. We could have other kinds of pro-socials. If you think of pro-social utility today as an asset, to have it, maybe depreciate. So for instance, what did we have for lunch today? We had a very nice soup, very delicious. But when I go out for dinner tonight, I'm not going to order that soup again, as much as I loved it. Right? after a few days go by, I might develop an appetite for that soup again, right? This seems all natural to us. I know when it's time to get a new car or a new pair of shoes. I can see when things are wearing out. I can tell when I'm hungry. There are natural indicators that tell me when it's time to buy more most stuff. When have I had enough charity to satisfy me? And when do I get hungry again for more pro-social behavior? Right? Somebody was telling me a story today about somebody they would pass on the street on the way to work every day. They would give money, but they saw this guy every day. They said, you know what? I give him $1 every day I go by. I can't keep doing this. I'm satiated in my warm glow. I need to take a break, build up some demand for warm glow again. Right? These things are all very ill-defined. And if you imagine if you change cities or cultures or the numbers of people who are out on the street asking for money, you'd also change your demands for these things and the timings of these things. So they're all socially defined. Now, what's natural in my culture? And this is actually how sociologists think about things like charitable giving. That what's the right amount of money for me to give depends on what somebody like Andy Schotter is giving. So he's obviously older than I am and wealthier, but we're in the same ballpark. He's much nicer than I am and better looking, I might add. But in this room here, he's probably one of the closest ones for my comparison. So I would pick out Andy and say, he's the closest example to me that's out there. What's he doing? And I think that's maybe how I'm going to judge whether I'm doing the right amount as well. Okay, so it's socially defined. And Andy's looking at other people too, and so these are big networks of social comparisons that are determining things. Sort of like Ricardo's talk that we saw today about knowing how much your boss makes affects how much you enjoy your job and how hard you work. These are socially defined sort of preferences by making comparisons. And it's probably true that charitable giving is defined a lot that way too, or other pro-social activities, volunteering, being helpful in other ways. Okay, so we need to look at all these different things. What do I have? You hear a lot of these words: legacy, impact, involvement, volunteerism, in the charitable giving world among fundraisers. These are motivations they try to sell people for why to give to charities. Especially lately when we've seen this big concentration of wealth at the very top end of things, we're seeing an interesting phenomenon where people will give nothing for years. That's my phone. It's telling me, oh my goodness. So yeah, it's time for me to go home. That's what this is telling me. It says, Jim, pick your head up out of your work. And notice that it's time for you to think about packing up and going to see your wife. So yeah, even on Saturdays, yes, I'm sorry to report. She's very sorry. So where was I? Oh yeah. So well, we get this pattern with very wealthy people give nothing for many years, and then all of a sudden there's a $2 million or $10 million wing of the hospital going up, or so they're trying to get something on the resume that says that says that they were better. They were good at more than just making a lot of money. They were also good at being a humanitarian. They want some positive thing on their vita, on their obituary, and there's lots of institutions in the U.S. that are promoting this kind of way of thinking about giving. It's really rather, it deserves study, I think. I think it's a little corrosive, but it deserves some more careful thought. Things like social pressure, prestige, self and social signaling. These are all kinds of words that you hear about describing often rather successfully different motives people have for doing nice things. So we all know about experiments where if someone can do something that's very pro-social and other people get to witness it, they're going to do a lot more of it. Okay. That's the typical example. So these are very powerful motives that are also non-consequential kinds of thinking that we should maybe be paying attention to. So we need to build models to explain why people respond to social incentives like being asked, and how often is an optimal time to ask people. Andy found, or excuse me, I let it secret, that giving every day was too often. Right? That he needs a real break so he can build up some hunger for his joy of giving. anchoring and social comparisons are also very important. The ideas of making promises for the future that you may or may not keep. It's much easier actually to get people to promise to give than not to give. And while you've got them promised to give, now you want to make it hard for them to break their promise. So it's like you're unexpectedly changing the rules of the game in the middle, and you can get even more out of folks once they make themselves vulnerable. So you can change all these things. You can affect how much people give, and you change the timing of these things. You can have create all kinds of havoc out there in the giving world and gin up more dollars. Which takes me to the next point, which is this a good thing? We discover how to manipulate people and manipulate their preferences for being recognized, being seen as a good person, and so forth. If we can manipulate these things to get the most money out of them as possible as a society, is this a good way to provide public goods and services? Whose kind of preferences are being represented when we do things this way? Is this too undemocratic? Because people vote with their dollars rather than with their, one person, one vote. Right? So how, are we, I think it's something we need to worry about in the US, especially that we're determining what the public sector, broadly defined, is producing by including more and more private provision of the public goods. There's an article in one of the newspapers recently about a very rich person who described her philanthropy as voluntary taxation. Now let's have, what's wrong with mandatory taxation of the same amount? Wouldn't that be great? We can have, we can have parks and roads that work and all these other great things. So you notice there are no methadone clinics with people's names on it. The Andy Schotter Methadone Clinic. Not, people aren't running to put their names on things like that, right? But he can he'll very likely when he finishes his illustrious career, they'll probably name something after him at NYU, something honorific for his great contributions to the university. But typically, it's harder and harder to get a building at a university named after you for having been a great dean, a very productive scientist, a wonderful humanitarian, right? You got to give money. It's too expensive to give that stuff away for free, just for being a good human being. No, you have to be a rich, good human being. And so is that a good thing? And there are some sort of implied social contracts are changing too. If you do give money to a university and they name a building after you, now there's in the contract that that's only good for 50, 75 years. It's not in perpetuity. So they get to resell that name. You only get that till after you're dead and most of your living relatives are dead. Then we can rename the building. That's kind of, this motives for taking advantage of people's own desires to do good, but by getting other kinds of incentives or desires satisfied. And is this good for society? And these are, I think, really big and important questions that are getting more important all the time. So I'll give you an example of something that I've done recently with Marta Sarah Garcia to look at these kinds of incentives. So as I said, the rewards from charitable giving are largely social rewards. So social utility can flow at many points along the giving process. So typically people don't give until they're asked. So the first step is somebody calls you up and you can decide, am I going to give or not give? If I decide that I'm going to give, maybe I haven't told the person who's asking me yet, but I can still feel good about myself. So deciding is actually an important step. Then I get to say yes or no to the person who's requesting it. I maybe get utility from saying yes. Then there's going to be the day where I deliver the money. We're going to have a news conference, lots of photographs, balloons, and things like that. Newspaper articles written. And then you're going to send me a big thank you letter or put my name on the building or something like that. All of these are ways that people can have flows of utility from one act of giving. You can do all these together, boom. Please give, thanks for the money, see you later. That's it, they're all done. Or you can spread this out and separate this by time and do things to affect how much you get, how frequently promises are fulfilled, and how many people you get to say yes in the first place, right? By messing around with the timing and the intensity with which you do these various things. Okay, so we show through a series of experiments that all these things matter, and putting more or less emphasis on one or the other can affect how much you get in the end. So I say it's now ex post to finishing the talk, and thank you very much for your coming. Professor Dr. Schotter.
Thank you. So, the way I thought through what you were saying was in the beginning, I said that I started out as a consequentialist because I said, look, no matter what I do, there's going to be one person in Africa with $10 and the other one without. And I don't know these people, so there's no reason why I should have a preference for who gets that $10, therefore I should be revised. But then I said, wait a second, if I put myself in the place of one of those people in Africa, then I would at least like me to give them an equal shot at getting it. So, but it was my ability to put myself in the place of those people that switched me from a consequentialist to a non-consequentialist. So without the empathy, I would stick with being a consequentialist, which makes me think that there might be something different in the people who stuck with being a consequentialist than those who weren't a consequentialist, and that's perhaps the variable that.
Yeah. Things like that have occurred to us, of course. One thing I wonder is a slightly different way than you put it, and I like the way you put it, though. That's a very very natural way to think about it. So I think, so when you put yourself in the other person's shoes, and you say, "Oh, I got cut out." All of a sudden, somebody's going to feel that way. You will feel bad in his stead, right? So, when we flip the coin and we say the yellow tickets count, not the red tickets, and so there you go. We got the 50-50 outcome, and this is the outcome. Your unwillingness to stop at that point, derived from your empathy, it could also be construed as saying, I don't want to be the one responsible. I'd rather, the coin is going to decide this, not me. Right? Then, because somebody's going to feel bad in the end, and somebody's going to be happy, and I don't want to be the one to take the fall for that. Right? So it's a little bit slightly different thinking than what you said, but we're getting to the same place, I think. But they're clearly different explanations of this, so that's a good one. Honorable Dr. Yariv. I gave you honorable. Okay, so I see. So you can give that A and B, but I won't tell you who. I won't tell you. I won't assign the households to A and B yet. So in addition, I think that's kind of what we. I mean, we don't tell them who they are. But what you're saying is if we explicitly state that one household is going to be assigned to A and B when we're all done, and I'm going to just roll a dice and I'll pick them up. So in the end, it's always going to be half-half. And so then you're going to be indifferent. That's implicitly what we do, but it's not explicitly said that way. But then you say take the story that Andy was suggesting. I think that would do the trick for. He could stay consequentialist that way because there's always going to be this 50-50 final allocation anyway. So the system would have ex ante fairness or ex post fairness built into it, or I guess it'd be 50-50 no matter what. So there would be really no distinction. I guess probably more the case, right? And yeah. So you can revise all you want, and it's really, yeah, it's really still going to be 50-50 in the end, I think. Is it? Yeah, I think that's also an interesting suggestion. Yeah. Yes, I'll do JC.
Explanation. A and B know that one of them ended up being lucky and the other one being unlucky. So that you can empathize by saying, I want to be in the shoes of this B person, because this B person knew that he had a chance of getting the $10 and he didn't, because A got. So A doesn't know that this is being, so they don't know.
Not in truth, no, they
So
don't.
in that case, how would they empathy?
Well,
Because you know that they don't know this is what is happening.
that he's super empathic.
Right,
Right?
but he knows that they don't know that one of them got bad.
But that's what you're putting yourself in their position. They don't know, but.
Yeah, but you're creating that situation out of unrealistic cases, because in the experimental design, A and B are not told that this is what is going, that this is what is happening. They just receive the knowledge.
Yes. So it has, he might, so if Andy feels that he will feel bad letting this thing stand at A getting the prize, it's like he's condoning this decision. He's going along with it. He's supporting that decision. He owns some responsibility for household A getting the whole prize. Maybe that is too burdensome for him. He'll always think, oh, what maybe B was the right household to get it, and I'll never know whether they lost their home, that something terrible happened because they didn't get the prize. So he can live without. So if he keeps it at 50-50, he can live without that guilt, even though it's all totally fictional in his mind and anybody else's. But these are, I think, things that would need to be teased out. It's kind of interesting to understand how people think about these consequences of their actions, even if who those consequences fall on are unaware of it. Yeah. Yes, sir.
These are very important conclusions, and these are very interesting discussions. Think about it for a second. I'm taking it in the village. Someone might say that, these students are just getting participation, and they are not incentivized. This is basically a survey decision. And you may respond back saying that that is already used methodology. People are like it, so they are willingly affected. What might vary in this experiment is that maybe their true preferences are not one of the options. Maybe it might be the case that the subject is selfish and doesn't care at all about the offering. And when you ask him how he's going to allocate between these two parties, he will say that, you know what, I don't care. And they'll have some sort of experimental demand effect. People is smart enough to figure that out. The act as if he's a fair God.
My response to that is a lot like when people say to me, when you do these public goods experiments or these dictator game experiments, this is all demand effects. Take dictator games. The people say, well, the students probably also walked into the experiment with $20 in their pocket already, and you give them $20 to divide with somebody else. Why don't they divide $40? You play a dictator game anytime you cross somebody on the street, and you give $0. And it's only because you put them in this situation and you've given them these instructions, and they see there's other people in the room that they decide to give. So it's a demand effect. It's also true that that nice gentleman on the street that there's some unnamed colleague of ours passes by every day, wouldn't be given any money if he didn't say, hold his hand out. You probably wouldn't give to you most of the charities that you give to if they didn't send you a mailing or have a phone call or see something on the television that precipitated that. So I think as a this whole idea of people giving money to anonymous other folks, and it's obvious why you would give money to your relatives and people that you care about very closely, but to strangers, that's a harder thing to explain. And it's the only way I can really understand that, yeah, it is a demand effect. It's the demand, the fundraisers demand it from you. As the scientist in the classroom experiments, I'm demanding it from you, and I'm watching you. And so the fact that you're only giving because you're in a dictator game is really the interesting part to me.
But actually, my point is more than the demand. It's the lack of incentive to listen to good references of individuals.
Yeah, so that's a valid point. Very valid point. So we would have to have some sort of hypothesis about why would they be discerning? Why would they make the efforts to give us such nicely organized data? And you might respond by saying, well, maybe that's just the simplest thing to do. And so maybe that's the least effort they can provide. And maybe it's not. But the problem of making their payoffs depend on what their choices are means that there's some choices that are going to have to pay more than others, which means we're sort of stacking the deck towards some kind of behavior. So I think we kind of have no choice but to have everything, all payments flat, to get at what they really believe about how they value the consequences of their choices.
One suggestion to that would be if you take this experiment, and at the end of the experiment, you ask your subject to play a standard dictator game, and look at the individuals who didn't give zero in the dictator game and how they allocated that.
So that's an awesome suggestion. I wish we had thought of that. It would have been nice to say, stay around another 10 minutes, we're going to play a little dictator game. And see if that correlated with their kind of fairness preferences that they exhibit. That would have been a great suggestion. Let me get the people who can't ask me the same question when I get home. First, but with all respect, Remy.
But, I mean, to do this revision opportunity in context where one of the A and B, right, like in because in that way, there's a stronger incentive to, when the outcome is against you, to revise. So to stress test that consequentialism, right?
So you want to do machine as mom experiment?
Like, yeah, you are one of the, so machines, so the mom is one of the beneficiaries. Again,
No.
Just that technology anymore. It's just you and somebody else with the extent, which has been done, but without the revision part. I think that would be one thing. And actually, that could also kind of drive what Eric was saying about incentives, because in that case, you are incentivized.
Yeah. So let me get this straight. So the computer's going to allocate 10 tickets, say 8-2. So I got 8 tickets, and Eric got 2, and now I have 10 tickets to divide. I'll just keep them all, right? That would be the selfish prediction.
What we find is that people, when it's you and the same dinner context, but it's you and another person, you still give some chance to that. It's not 50-50 anymore. It's 10%. Depends on how you do it. But that 20% is also very consistent, right? So the other question I think was also like, how do you test the strictness also with having you as one of the subjects? Because people strictly, even if you change tilt a little bit the chances on one side, you will still give the other guy 10, 20. So that way you will tackle a couple of the possible.
That's a very, very well taken points, I think, yes. Remy?
So, one ethical theory that's consequentialist is utilitarianism.
Mhm.
So, do you think it's fair for us to read the set results as saying that economics should move beyond utilitarianism as a positive or normative basis?
I think it's not, what I'm not saying is normative at all. This is a positive model. What do people in the world, what are their moral views? And how do we understand those? And what consequences do they have for the kind of world we live in? Right? So we're not trying to say that this is better than, one thing is better than the other, or there's no ought to do in this. It's what do they, how do they feel, how do they act? And there are lots of private institutions that do the job of redistribution the government used to do. And these are driven by these forces in part. So, so it's important to recognize that, so I don't think Bill Gates is a utilitarian in the way he makes his charitable giving every year. The Gates Foundation is not utilitarian. They have very specific goals and driven by their own agenda. So, yeah, that's a way to put it. Great. Thank you. All right. And you guys, we thank you guys. We thank our hosts. Yeah, very good. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Now as you know, we're heading to Andres, DC. The address should be on the map. Everyone should have the address. If you don't have the address, please look for one of us to make sure you know how to get there.
I'm not very good at giving directions, but I'm definitely better than Diego, and Cesar is too shy. So if you are not very clear on how to get there, just tell the driver that you're going to El Retiro, which is basically a mall, and so don't enter to El Retiro, but then you are going to see I'm going to mispronounce this, I'm sorry. You're going to see a Jimmy Choo store, and the next door from the Jimmy Choo store, stop laughing, is Andres DC.
Un último.
Sí.
Gracias.
Que
Muchísimas
gusto
gracias.
verte, estamos en contacto. Y bueno, no, si vas a estar viniendo a Colombia, avísame.
¿Tú estás?
Acá.
Acá.
Sí, yo estoy acá.
Vale, vale, vale.
Pasado acá, permanente. Lo que pasa es que estuve de viaje porque se casaba mi esposa en diciembre, entonces fuimos ahí, por eso nos quedamos para las fiestas allá con la familia. Pero normalmente estoy acá, entonces si
Vale,
vienes
vale.
por algo,
Sí, 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 ahí,
quizás-
no, no lo sabía, perfecto.
Sí, sí, sí.
Pues sí, seguro entonces.
Tenemos la cerveza también, entonces aprovechamos.
Una cosa muy aburrida. Te lo voy a reenviar. Sí, pero sí,